Have you ever wondered why you couldn't stop thinking about someone, even when they did nothing special? Why a single message from them could change your mood for the entire day? Why the ones who confuse you often attract you the most? This is not love. This is seduction working silently on your mind. Seduction is not loud. It does not beg. It does not chase. It invites. It withholds. It reflects your deepest unspoken desires back to you until you believe you chose it yourself. In this story, you will not learn how to manipulate hearts. You will learn how hearts are already being manipulated. You will discover why attention feels like oxygen, why mystery is more powerful than beauty, why absence can hurt more than rejection, and why the human mind falls long before the heart ever does. This is not a love story. This is a psychological mirror. Welcome to Silent Mind Diaries. The Art of Seduction, a complete exploration. The hidden language of desire. Desire speaks in whispers, not proclamations. It communicates through glances held a moment too long, through the careful selection of words that seem casual but carry weight, through gestures that appear accidental but reveal intention. This hidden language operates beneath the surface of ordinary interaction, creating an undercurrent that pulls two people together before either fully understands what is happening. The architecture of desire is built on subtlety. When we desire something openly and obviously, we often diminish its power over us and over others. But when desire is suggested, hinted at, and left partially concealed, it becomes magnetic. This is why the most effective seducers rarely speak directly about their intentions. Instead, they create an atmosphere where desire can grow organically, where the other person begins to feel something stirring without quite knowing why. Consider how desire manifests in conversation. The seducer does not simply compliment. That would be too direct, too easily categorized and dismissed. Instead, they notice. They observe small details that others miss, the way someone's eyes light up when discussing a particular passion, the specific phrases they use when animated, the subtle changes in their demeanor. By reflecting these observations back, the seducer creates a mirror in which the other person sees themselves as fascinating, as worthy of this intense attention. The message beneath the message is clear. I see you in ways others do not. The hidden language also operates through strategic inattention. The seducer does not always respond immediately, does not always make themselves available. This creates a rhythm of presence and absence that keeps the other person slightly off balance, always wondering when the next contact will come. It prevents the relationship from settling into predictable patterns where desire can become routine and thus die. Body language forms another crucial element of this hidden vocabulary. The way someone positions themselves in relation to another person, whether they lean in or maintain distance, how they angle their body, where their feet point, all of these communicate interest or disinterest before words are even spoken. The seducer masters this physical grammar, using open postures to invite closeness while occasionally creating small barriers that must be overcome. They understand that mixed signals, when not taken to extremes, create a productive uncertainty that keeps the other person engaged and seeking clarity. The hidden language extends to the digital realm as well. In an age of constant connectivity, the timing of messages, the choice between different communication channels, and the strategic use of delays all communicate desire or its absence. A message sent late at night carries different implications than one sent midday. A voice note instead of text suggests a different level of intimacy. The seducer navigates these modern channels with the same attention to subtlety, understanding that how and when they communicate often matters more than what they say. Why the mind falls before the heart. We like to imagine ourselves as rational beings who make decisions based on logic and careful consideration, yet in matters of attraction and seduction, the mind typically surrenders long before the heart engages. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't we feel first and then rationalize second? But seduction operates by first capturing the imagination, the faculty of the mind that deals in possibilities and fantasies, before emotions fully develop. The mind falls first because it is the mind that constructs narratives. When we meet someone intriguing, our minds immediately begin telling stories about them, filling in gaps, creating a character from incomplete information. The seducer understands this and provides just enough information to guide this narrative construction while leaving ample space for idealization. They become a character in a story the other person is writing for themselves, and this imagined version often becomes more compelling than reality. This mental capture happens through a process of stimulation and frustration. The seducer presents themselves as a puzzle to be solved, offering clues but never complete answers. The mind becomes obsessed with this puzzle, returning to it during idle moments, trying to piece together a complete picture. This mental activity creates an illusion of intimacy. After all, we spend so much time thinking about this person. Surely they must be important to us. The thoughts create the feeling, not the other way around. Fascination precedes affection. Before we love someone, we become fascinated by them. This fascination is an intellectual and imaginative state, where we find ourselves curious, intrigued, unable to predict. The seducer maintains this fascination by revealing themselves in layers, each revelation seemingly taking us deeper while actually maintaining the essential mystery. They might share a meaningful story from their past, creating the impression of openness, while the story itself raises new questions about their character and motivations.
The mind also falls first because of projection. We project onto attractive strangers and acquaintances our own ideals, desires, and fantasies. A skilled seducer recognizes this and becomes a mirror, reflecting back what the other person wants to see. They listen carefully for the values, dreams, and qualities the other person admires, then subtly embody these traits. The target begins to see in the seducer their ideal partner, not recognizing that they are largely seeing their own desires reflected back. Intellectual seduction, engaging someone's mind through conversation, ideas, and mental stimulation, often proves more lasting than purely physical attraction. When we find someone who challenges our thinking, introduces us to new perspectives, or engages with our ideas seriously, we begin to associate them with mental growth and expansion. The mind craves novelty and stimulation, and a person who provides these becomes addictive. We think of them when we encounter interesting ideas, wanting to share these thoughts with them, and thus they become woven into our mental life. The conquest of the mind also involves creating what might be called manufactured synchronicity. The seducer arranges apparent coincidences, shared interests, similar experiences, complementary views that make the connection feel fated. The mind loves patterns and meaning, and when we perceive these synchronicities, we construct narratives about destiny and special connections. We think, what are the odds, without realizing that these odds have been carefully managed. Once the mind is captured, it begins to advocate for the seducer to the heart. The mind manufactures reasons why this person is special, why this connection matters, why risks should be taken. It becomes a co-conspirator in its own seduction, convincing the rest of the self that what began as fascination should become something deeper. By the time the heart engages, the mental territory has already been claimed, the narrative already written. The heart simply moves into a space the mind has prepared. The mind's tendency toward rationalization also works in the seducer's favor. Once we have invested mental energy in someone, our minds begin to rationalize this investment. We look for evidence that confirms our interest while dismissing or minimizing contradictory information. This confirmation bias means that the mind, once captured, actively works to maintain its captivity. It becomes invested in the story it has created and resists information that would require rewriting that story. The psychology of attraction. Attraction is not random, though it often feels that way. Beneath the surface of what seems like chemistry or fate, psychological principles are at work, patterns that can be understood and to some degree influenced. The psychology of attraction involves understanding what draws humans to each other and why certain people seem to possess an almost gravitational pull, while others, equally attractive on paper, leave us cold. At the foundation of attraction lies the concept of validation. We are drawn to those who make us feel good about ourselves, who reflect back an image of ourselves that we like. This is why genuinely listening, remembering details, and showing interest in someone's thoughts and experiences creates attraction. It validates their sense that they are interesting, worthy of attention, and significant. The seducer becomes associated with positive feelings about the self, and we naturally gravitate toward what makes us feel good. The mind also falls first because of projection. We project onto attractive strangers and acquaintances our own ideals, desires, and fantasies. A skilled seducer recognizes this and becomes a mirror, reflecting back what the other person wants to see. They listen carefully for the values, dreams, and qualities the other person admires, then subtly embody these traits. The target begins to see in the seducer their ideal partner, not recognizing that they are largely seeing their own desires reflected back. Intellectual seduction, engaging someone's mind through conversation, ideas, and mental stimulation, often proves more lasting than purely physical attraction. When we find someone who challenges our thinking, introduces us to new perspectives, or engages with our ideas seriously, we begin to associate them with mental growth and expansion. The mind craves novelty and stimulation, and a person who provides these becomes addictive. We think of them when we encounter interesting ideas, wanting to share these thoughts with them, and thus they become woven into our mental life. The conquest of the mind also involves creating what might be called manufactured synchronicity. The seducer arranges apparent coincidences, shared interests, similar experiences, complementary views that make the connection feel fated. The mind loves patterns and meaning, and when we perceive these synchronicities, we construct narratives about destiny and special connections. We think, what are the odds, without realizing that these odds have been carefully managed. Once the mind is captured, it begins to advocate for the seducer to the heart. The mind manufactures reasons why this person is special, why this connection matters, why risks should be taken. It becomes a co-conspirator in its own seduction, convincing the rest of the self that what began as fascination should become something deeper. By the time the heart engages, the mental territory has already been claimed, the narrative already written. The heart simply moves into a space the mind has prepared. The mind's tendency toward rationalization also works in the seducer's favor. Once we have invested mental energy in someone, our minds begin to rationalize this investment. We look for evidence that confirms our interest while dismissing or minimizing contradictory information. This confirmation bias means that the mind, once captured, actively works to maintain its captivity. It becomes invested in the story it has created and resists information that would require rewriting that story. The psychology of attraction. Attraction is not random, though it often feels that way. Beneath the surface of what seems like chemistry or fate, psychological principles are at work, patterns that can be understood and to some degree influenced. The psychology of attraction involves understanding what draws humans to each other and why certain people seem to possess an almost gravitational pull, while others, equally attractive on paper, leave us cold. At the foundation of attraction lies the concept of validation. We are drawn to those who make us feel good about ourselves, who reflect back an image of ourselves that we like. This is why genuinely listening, remembering details, and showing interest in someone's thoughts and experiences creates attraction. It validates their sense that they are interesting, worthy of attention, and significant. The seducer becomes associated with positive feelings about the self, and we naturally gravitate toward what makes us feel good.
Contrast and complement play crucial roles in attraction psychology. We are drawn to people who are both similar enough to feel familiar and different enough to feel exciting. Too much similarity becomes boring. There's no mystery, no challenge, nothing to discover. Too much difference feels alienating and creates barriers to connection. The sweet spot involves shared core values and worldviews, with surface-level differences in interests, experiences, and perspectives. This combination allows for easy rapport while maintaining intrigue. The principle of scarcity powerfully affects attraction. We value what seems rare or difficult to obtain. This is why someone who is selectively social, who doesn't offer their time and attention to everyone freely, often attracts more interest than someone equally appealing but more available. The psychology here is simple. If something valuable is accessible to everyone, perhaps it isn't so valuable after all. But if that same thing is selective about where it bestows its attention, suddenly it seems more desirable. The seducer understands this and creates an aura of selectivity, making others feel that capturing their interest represents a meaningful achievement. Emotional contagion significantly impacts attraction. We unconsciously mirror the emotional states of those around us, especially those we're paying attention to. Someone who radiates confidence, joy, passion, or intensity tends to evoke similar feelings in others. The seducer cultivates positive emotional states not through forced enthusiasm, but through genuine engagement with life, interests, and the present moment. This emotional richness becomes infectious, and people want to be around them to access these feelings themselves. The psychology of attraction also involves what might be called strategic imperfection. Counterintuitively, flawlessness can repel rather than attract. It creates distance, making someone seem unapproachable or unreal. Small imperfections, quirks, or vulnerabilities humanize us and create connection points. The seducer, who occasionally reveals uncertainty, admits to failures, or displays endearing oddities, becomes more, not less, attractive. These imperfections paradoxically highlight their overall appeal while making them seem attainable. Physical attraction, while often emphasized, actually operates on more psychological than purely aesthetic principles. We find attractive those whose facial features and body language signal qualities we value. Symmetry suggests genetic health, but confidence in movement suggests capability and self-assurance. The way someone carries themselves, makes eye contact, and uses space often matters more than conventionally beautiful features. The seducer understands that physical attraction can be cultivated through posture, movement, and nonverbal communication that signals desirable psychological qualities. The concept of intermittent reinforcement from behavioral psychology explains why hot and cold dynamics can be so compelling. When rewards come unpredictably, sometimes attention and warmth, sometimes distance and unavailability, the brain's reward centers become more activated than with consistent rewards. This is why the seducer who is always available often loses appeal, while one who creates unpredictable patterns of engagement can become obsessive. The uncertainty creates a psychological itch that demands scratching. Attraction also involves the creation of shared secrets and private worlds. When two people share experiences, jokes, or information that others don't have access to, it creates a sense of special connection. The seducer engineers these moments of private understanding, creating an us versus them dynamic that bonds people together. This might be as simple as an inside joke or as significant as shared vulnerability, but the effect is the same. The relationship begins to feel unique and irreplaceable. The principle of reciprocity works powerfully in attraction. We tend to like those who we believe like us. However, the seducer understands a subtlety here. Too much obvious liking can seem desperate or lacking in standards. The sweet spot involves signals of interest combined with enough challenge or selectivity to make the other person work for approval. This creates a psychological investment. We value what we work for more than what comes easily, while still providing the validation that draws us toward others. Social proof also influences attraction significantly. We find people more attractive when others seem to value them. The seducer, who is sought after by others, who has social currency and status within their community, becomes more desirable. This is why displaying social connections, having others speak positively about you, and demonstrating that you have options all increase attraction. We unconsciously reason that if others value this person, perhaps we should too. Illusions that make people love. Love, despite romantic notions of pure and uncomplicated feeling, is built substantially on illusions. We fall in love not just with who someone is, but with who we imagine them to be, with how they make us feel, and with the story we create around the relationship. The skilled seducer understands this and carefully cultivates illusions that allow love to take root and flourish. The primary illusion is the illusion of understanding. We believe we understand the seducer, that we have special insight into their inner world. This illusion is created through selective revelation. The seducer shares personal stories, vulnerabilities, and thoughts that seem to provide deep access to their character. However, what is shared is carefully chosen to create a particular impression, while the full complexity remains hidden. The other person feels they have been given the keys to understanding this person, when in reality, they have been given a curated version designed to fascinate.
Another powerful illusion is the illusion of potential. The seducer presents themselves as becoming, as still unfolding toward some greater destiny. They have ambitions, dreams, talents that are developing. This creates an exciting dynamic where the other person feels they are catching someone on the rise, getting in early on something special. It also invites the other person to imagine themselves as part of this unfolding story, perhaps even as the catalyst that helps the seducer reach their potential. This illusion keeps the relationship oriented toward future possibilities rather than present realities. The illusion of necessity is particularly potent. The seducer, through carefully demonstrated need, makes the other person feel essential to their happiness or well-being. This is done not through desperate dependency, but through selective vulnerability. Perhaps they are struggling with something, facing a challenge, or lacking something that only this particular person can provide. The other person begins to feel that they occupy a unique position, that they matter in a way they might not matter to others. This illusion of being needed creates a sense of purpose and importance that can be intoxicating. There is also the illusion of the exceptional connection. Every relationship is in some sense unique, but the seducer makes the other person feel that this particular connection is rare, perhaps once in a lifetime. They might reference the unusual circumstances of their meeting, the unexpected compatibility, the ease of communication, the depth of understanding. They create a narrative in which this relationship stands apart from all others, making it feel precious and worth fighting for. The other person becomes invested in this narrative and works to maintain it. The illusion of transformation forms another pillar of seductive love. The seducer shows how the relationship is changing them, helping them become better, more complete. They might attribute new happiness, insights, or personal growth to the relationship. This creates a powerful dynamic where the other person feels their presence in the seducer's life is meaningful and positive. More subtly, the seducer may also hold up the possibility that they can help transform the other person, can help them become their best self. This promise of mutual transformation makes the relationship feel developmental and important. Another illusion involves idealization. The seducer carefully manages how they are perceived, showing their best qualities most consistently while revealing flaws strategically and in ways that don't diminish overall appeal. They create situations where they appear at their best, interesting social settings, activities where they excel, moments when they are relaxed and happy. Over time, the other person's mental image becomes a highlight reel rather than a complete picture. This idealized version becomes the person they love, and reality has difficulty competing with this carefully constructed image. The illusion of sacrifice plays a surprisingly significant role. The seducer finds ways to demonstrate that they are giving up something for the relationship, making sacrifices or accommodations. These sacrifices are usually carefully chosen to be visible but not actually very costly. However, they create a sense that the seducer is invested, is choosing this relationship over alternatives, is willing to make compromises. This not only demonstrates commitment, but also can trigger reciprocity. The other person feels they should also sacrifice, also demonstrate commitment, and thus becomes more invested themselves. There is also what might be called the illusion of authenticity. In a world where people often feel that others are performing or hiding their true selves, the seducer creates moments of apparent, genuine authenticity. They might admit to insecurities, express emotions that seem unguarded, or share thoughts they claim not to have shared before. These moments of realness feel precious and create the impression that with you, the seducer can be their true self. This is an illusion because everyone, including seducers, is always performing to some degree, but the performance of authenticity itself can be incredibly compelling.
The illusion of alignment, that you want the same things from life, share core values, and envision compatible futures, is carefully maintained. The seducer listens for what the other person values and envisions, then echoes these values and visions back. They might emphasize shared interests while downplaying differences, or find common ground in unexpected places. Over time, the other person comes to believe that they have found someone who sees the world similarly, making the relationship feel natural and effortless. The reality of future incompatibilities remains conveniently obscured by the present sense of alignment. The illusion of exclusivity adds another layer. The seducer makes the other person feel that they are being given access or consideration that others do not receive. This might involve sharing information that seems confidential, inviting them into spaces others cannot enter, or treating them with a particular tenderness that appears reserved for them alone. Whether or not this exclusivity is real matters less than the perception of it, which makes the other person feel special and chosen. Finally, there is the grand illusion that underlies all others, the illusion that what is being felt is entirely spontaneous and natural rather than guided and cultivated. The other person believes that their feelings emerged organically, that they simply fell in love. They don't recognize the countless small choices, strategic revelations, and psychological dynamics that helped create those feelings. This final illusion protects all the others, because to recognize the seduction would be to break its spell. The most successful seduction is one where the seduced believe they were never seduced at all, but simply discovered love. The power of mystery and absence. Mystery and absence are perhaps the most underestimated tools in the art of seduction. In a culture that celebrates transparency, constant communication, and availability, the seducer understands that what is partially hidden is more alluring than what is fully revealed, and that absence can create more intense presence than constant proximity ever could. Mystery begins with the understanding that humans are naturally curious creatures who cannot resist a puzzle. When we encounter someone who seems knowable on the surface but hints at hidden depths, our minds become engaged in trying to solve them. The seducer cultivates this by revealing themselves in layers, each revelation seeming significant while actually maintaining the core mystery intact. They might share a meaningful story from their past, but the story itself contains unexplained elements, decisions that seem out of character, or references to experiences that remain undescribed. Each answer generates new questions. The power of mystery lies in what it prevents. It prevents finality. Once we feel we fully understand someone, that we have categorized them completely, they lose much of their fascination. Predictability is the enemy of desire. The mysterious person, by contrast, remains slightly out of reach mentally and emotionally. We can never quite pin them down, never quite predict how they will react or what they will reveal next. This unpredictability keeps attention focused on them because the mind constantly seeks patterns and understanding that remain just slightly elusive. Mystery is also maintained through selective silence. The seducer does not share everything, does not account for all their time, and does not explain every decision. They maintain a private sphere that others cannot access. This privacy is not secretive in a deceptive sense, but rather demonstrates that they have a rich inner life and experiences that exist independently of any relationship. Others wonder what the seducer thinks about when alone, what they do with their private time, what aspects of themselves remain hidden. This wondering keeps them mentally present even when physically absent. Absence operates through a complementary dynamic. The old saying, "absence makes the heart grow fonder," contains psychological truth, but not because time apart automatically creates affection. Rather, absence works because it creates space for idealization and longing. When someone is constantly present, we see them in all their mundane reality, tired, routine, ordinary. When they are intermittently absent, we remember the highlights, imagine them in their best moments, and project positive qualities onto the spaces their absence creates. Strategic absence also prevents the relationship from becoming taken for granted. When someone is always available, always responsive, always making themselves accessible, human psychology tends to devalue them. We assume that what is always available will continue to be available, so we place it lower on our priority list. The person who maintains some unavailability, who has other commitments and interests that sometimes take precedent, paradoxically becomes more valued. Their time becomes precious because it is limited. The rhythm of presence and absence creates a dynamic similar to breathing, expansion and contraction, pursuit and retreat. During periods of presence, the seducer is engaging, attentive, and creates memorable experiences. Then they withdraw, creating space. This withdrawal should never be explained as game playing or strategy. Instead, it should appear as the natural result of a full life with multiple demands and interests. The other person experiences the pleasure of the seducer's presence, then the disappointment of absence, then the renewed pleasure of return. This emotional variability is more stimulating than consistent presence. Absence also shifts the dynamic of pursuit. When someone is constantly pursuing us, we can become complacent, secure in their interest, but when they occasionally withdraw, we begin to pursue.
This reversal is psychologically powerful because it transforms us from the pursued into the pursuer, and we become more invested in what we actively seek than in what passively seeks us. The seducer who can inspire pursuit by judicious absence has achieved a significant tactical advantage. Mystery and absence together create anticipation, and anticipation is often more pleasurable than fulfillment. The moments before seeing someone we desire, wondering what will happen, imagining possible scenarios, these moments of anticipation can be intensely pleasurable. The seducer who maintains some mystery and doesn't always immediately satisfy every desire draws out this anticipatory pleasure. Each encounter becomes an event rather than a routine interaction.
However, both mystery and absence must be calibrated carefully. Too much mystery becomes opacity, which can frustrate and alienate rather than attract. If someone seems completely unknowable or withholds so much that no real connection can form, the other person may simply give up. Similarly, too much absence reads as disinterest rather than strategic withdrawal. The key is balance. Enough mystery to intrigue, but enough revelation to connect. Enough absence to create longing, but enough presence to maintain the relationship. The seducer also understands that mystery deepens over time, rather than being front-loaded. Initially, some transparency helps establish trust and connection, but as the relationship develops, maintaining layers that have not yet been revealed becomes increasingly important. This might mean developing new interests, continuing to grow and change, or simply maintaining boundaries around certain aspects of one's inner life. The person who continues to surprise, who can still be unpredictable even after long acquaintance, defies the usual pattern where familiarity breeds contempt or mere comfort. Finally, mystery and absence work together to create narrative tension. Every good story needs unanswered questions and obstacles to keep the audience engaged. A relationship where everything is always clear, always available, and always resolved quickly has no narrative tension, but one where mystery keeps generating questions and absence creates obstacles has the structure of an engaging story. The participants remain engaged because they are living in a story that hasn't yet reached its conclusion, and humans are psychologically driven to see stories through to their end. How attention becomes addiction. Attention is the currency of modern seduction, and the skilled seducer understands how to transform ordinary attention into something far more powerful: psychological dependency. This transformation follows predictable pathways rooted in neuroscience and behavioral psychology, creating patterns where the other person begins to crave the seducer's attention like a substance. The process begins with what might be called attention abundance. In the early stages, the seducer provides generous, focused, high-quality attention. They listen deeply, remember details, follow up on previous conversations, and make the other person feel genuinely seen and heard. This creates a baseline of expectation and a powerful positive association. The brain releases dopamine in response to this rewarding attention, creating pleasurable feelings that become linked to the seducer's presence. But abundance alone doesn't create addiction. Predictability kills desire. The transformation to addiction happens when the seducer introduces variability. After establishing the baseline of generous attention, they begin to vary its availability. Sometimes they're fully present and engaged. Other times they're distracted or distant. Sometimes they respond immediately. Other times hours pass. This inconsistency activates the same neural pathways as gambling, where the unpredictability of rewards make them more compelling than consistent ones.
The psychological principle at work here is intermittent reinforcement, one of the most powerful tools for creating compulsive behavior. When rewards come unpredictably, the brain never learns to anticipate them accurately, so it remains in a state of heightened attention and desire. The person begins checking their phone constantly, hoping for contact. They replay recent interactions, trying to understand what changed. They become hyper-vigilant to signs of the seducer's mood and availability. This mental preoccupation is the hallmark of addiction. The seducer also creates what might be called attention contrast. They ensure that their attention, when given, is significantly higher quality than what the person receives from others. They remember not just major life events, but small details, a comment made weeks ago, a passing preference mentioned casually, a subtle change in behavior. This demonstrates a level of attentiveness that makes other relationships pale in comparison. The person begins to feel that only the seducer truly sees them, and this creates a form of psychological dependency where validation from others feels insufficient. Social media and digital communication have amplified the addictive potential of attention. The seducer can now create multiple attention channels: texts, calls, social media interactions, in-person meetings, and vary attention across these channels strategically. They might be responsive on one platform while silent on another, creating complexity and unpredictability. They understand the psychological impact of read receipts, response times, and the quality of responses, a paragraph versus a single emoji, and they vary these strategically.
The addictive quality also emerges from emotional intensity. The seducer doesn't just provide attention, they provide attention that comes with emotional charge. Conversations aren't just pleasant, they're meaningful, intense, memorable. When they laugh, it's genuine and full. When they listen, it's with complete focus. This emotional intensity makes their attention feel more valuable and harder to obtain elsewhere. The brain begins to crave not just attention, but the specific emotional experience that comes with the seducer's attention. Withdrawal is a key component of addiction, and the seducer creates this deliberately. After periods of intense attention and connection, they pull back. They become busy, unavailable, focused elsewhere. The person experiences this withdrawal as a loss, sometimes even physical discomfort, the anxiety of wondering where they stand, the compulsive checking of devices, the inability to concentrate on other things. This withdrawal phase makes the return of attention feel like relief, creating a cycle of tension and release that becomes psychologically binding. The seducer also employs what might be called attention rationing. They make their time and focus seem scarce and valuable. They might mention being busy, having many demands, or being selective about how they spend their time. This creates a framework where receiving their attention feels like winning a competition, like being chosen. The person begins to compete not just with others, but with all the other demands on the seducer's time, trying to earn priority status. Addiction also involves tolerance, needing more of the substance to achieve the same effect. The seducer manages this by gradually raising the bar for what constitutes meaningful attention. Early in the relationship, a simple text might have created excitement. Later, only in-person meetings feel significant. The person finds themselves wanting more time, more intensity, more explicit validation. This escalation serves the seducer's interests by making the person increasingly invested in obtaining what only the seducer can provide. The transformation of attention into addiction also involves identity. The person begins to define themselves partly through the seducer's attention and approval. They wonder, what would they think of this when making decisions? They imagine sharing experiences with the seducer even when apart. They measure their own worth partly by the seducer's interest in them. This integration of the seducer into their self-concept means that losing the seducer's attention would mean losing part of themselves, creating powerful motivation to maintain the connection. The neuroscience underlying this process is clear. Dopamine, the brain's reward chemical, is released not just when we receive rewards, but in anticipation of them. The unpredictable attention from the seducer keeps dopamine systems activated, creating a state of constant anticipation. Over time, the person's brain begins to associate the seducer with reward at a neurological level, making their presence or contact trigger automatic positive responses that bypass conscious evaluation. Finally, the addictive pattern is reinforced through what psychologists call partial reinforcement extinction effect. Behaviors learned through intermittent reinforcement are incredibly resistant to extinction. Even when the seducer's attention becomes increasingly rare or inconsistent, the person continues seeking it, remembering the powerful rewards it once provided and hoping to recapture that experience. This explains why people often remain attached to seducers long after rational analysis would suggest they should disengage. The addictive pattern has become deeply ingrained. Ego, fantasy, and emotional hunger. At the deepest level, seduction operates by tapping into ego needs, feeding fantasies, and satisfying emotional hungers that may have existed long before the seducer arrived. The most powerful seductions are those that make people feel they are becoming their ideal selves, living in their desired narrative, and finally having their deepest emotional needs met. The ego, our sense of self-importance, our image of who we are and who we want to be, is surprisingly fragile and constantly seeking reinforcement. The seducer becomes a mirror that reflects back an enhanced version of the person. They don't simply accept the person as they are, they see potential, greatness, qualities that perhaps even the person themselves hadn't fully recognized. This is different from simple flattery. The seducer identifies genuine qualities and amplifies them, making the person feel that in the seducer's presence they become the best version of themselves. This ego reinforcement works because most people harbor doubts about themselves. They wonder if they're interesting enough, attractive enough, worthy of attention and love. The seducer provides evidence that they are indeed all these things. Through attention, appreciation, and carefully calibrated praise, the seducer becomes associated with positive self-feeling. Being around them becomes addictive because it relieves the constant low-level anxiety of self-doubt. Fantasy operates on a different but related level. Everyone carries fantasies about how they want their life to be, what kind of person they want to be with, what kind of relationship would be ideal. These fantasies are often partly unconscious, absorbed from culture, formed by past experiences, and shaped by unmet needs. The skilled seducer identifies these fantasies through careful listening and observation, then positions themselves as the person who can make these fantasies real. If someone fantasizes about being saved or rescued, the seducer presents problems they can solve. If someone fantasizes about adventure and excitement, the seducer introduces spontaneity and novelty. If someone fantasizes about being deeply understood, the seducer demonstrates unusual perceptiveness and empathy. The key is that the seducer doesn't impose their own vision, but discovers and embodies the other person's existing fantasies. They become the actor in a play the other person has been writing in their imagination. Emotional hunger represents the unfulfilled emotional needs that drive much of human behavior. These hungers often originate in childhood: the need for unconditional acceptance, the need to feel special, the need for security, the need for excitement.
the need to matter to someone. Most adults carry some combination of these unmet needs, usually without full awareness. The seducer identifies which emotional hungers are most acute and positions themselves as the person who can finally satisfy them.
For someone hungry for stability, the seducer demonstrates reliability and consistency, at least initially. For someone hungry for passion, the seducer brings intensity and emotional depth. For someone hungry for admiration, the seducer provides an attentive audience. The emotional hunger might stem from past relationships that failed to provide something essential, from family dynamics that left certain needs unmet, or from cultural narratives that created expectations current reality hasn't fulfilled. The seducer also understands that ego, fantasy, and emotional hunger often work together in powerful combinations. A person might fantasize about being with someone who sees their potential, feeding ego, being in a passionate and meaningful relationship, feeding fantasy, and finally feeling truly known and accepted, satisfying emotional hunger. The seducer who can address all three simultaneously creates an almost irresistible pull. There's also what might be called the completion fantasy, the belief that another person can make us whole, can fill what's missing in our lives. This fantasy is particularly powerful because it offers a solution to existential dissatisfaction. The seducer subtly encourages this fantasy by seeming to possess qualities the person lacks. If the person feels their life lacks excitement, the seducer appears adventurous. If they feel intellectually stagnant, the seducer introduces new ideas. This complementarity creates the illusion that together they form a complete whole. The dark side of working with ego is that ego is never satisfied. No matter how much reinforcement it receives, it always wants more. The seducer who feeds ego creates an escalating need for validation that can never be fully met. The person becomes dependent on the seducer for their sense of self-worth, which gives the seducer tremendous power, but also creates an unstable dynamic prone to collapse if the supply of validation is disrupted. Fantasy has its own dangers. When the seducer has positioned themselves as the embodiment of someone's fantasies, they carry the burden of maintaining this illusion. Reality inevitably intrudes. The seducer reveals characteristics that don't fit the fantasy. Circumstances change. The initial excitement fades. The person must then choose between adjusting their fantasy to accommodate reality or rejecting the seducer for failing to maintain the illusion. Many seductions fail at exactly this point. Emotional hunger, when exploited, raises ethical questions. Is it acceptable to position oneself as the answer to someone's deep needs, knowing that no person can truly fulfill another's emotional hungers? The person who has had their emotional hunger temporarily satisfied often becomes desperately attached, willing to overlook red flags and accept treatment they wouldn't otherwise tolerate. Their need clouds their judgment, making them vulnerable to exploitation. The seducer who understands these dynamics faces a choice. They can use this knowledge to create genuine connections where both parties grow and satisfy each other's needs in balanced ways, or they can exploit these vulnerabilities for selfish ends, extracting what they want while giving only the illusion of fulfillment. This choice reveals the moral dimension that underlies all seduction, the question of whether one seeks mutual enrichment or unilateral advantage. Understanding how ego, fantasy, and emotional hunger operate also provides protection. When we recognize these forces in ourselves, we can evaluate whether a connection is genuinely healthy or whether we're being drawn in by someone who is identified and is manipulating our vulnerabilities. The person who has done their own psychological work, who understands their own fantasies and emotional hungers, becomes harder to manipulate because they can distinguish between genuine connection and strategic exploitation. The dark beauty of influence. Influence, in the context of seduction, exists in morally ambiguous territory.
It is neither purely good nor purely evil, but rather a force whose ethics depend entirely on how and why it's wielded. There is something undeniably beautiful about the ability to touch another person's emotions, to inspire them to see possibilities they hadn't recognized, to draw out their best qualities. Yet this same ability can be used to confuse, control, and diminish. The darkness in influence emerges from its invisibility. When physical force is used, the victim knows they're being coerced, but influence operates beneath conscious awareness. The influenced person believes they're making free choices, following their own desires, acting on their authentic feelings. They don't see the psychological architecture that has been constructed around them, the careful framing of options, the emotional conditioning that has shaped their preferences. This invisibility means that influence, when used maliciously, can do tremendous damage, while the victim blames themselves for their choices. Yet there is beauty in influence as well. The teacher who influences students to believe in their capabilities, the leader who influences followers to pursue noble goals, the partner who influences someone towards growth and self-actualization. All of these use the same psychological principles as the manipulative seducer, but towards constructive ends. The beauty lies in the expansion of possibility, the creation of connection, the inspiration towards becoming more than one was. The dark beauty reveals itself in skill and artistry. There is something aesthetically compelling about watching a master seducer work, even knowing the manipulation involved. The precise calibration of attention, the careful construction of mystery, the strategic vulnerability, the perfect timing of advance and retreat, these require deep understanding of human psychology and tremendous discipline. Like watching a con artist execute an elaborate scheme or a magician perform impossible illusions, there's an appreciation for the craft even when we disapprove of the application. Influence in seduction also reveals uncomfortable truths about human nature. We like to believe we are rational, autonomous individuals making free choices, but the ease with which skilled seducers can shape our feelings and decisions reveals how much of our inner life operates below conscious control. We are influenced by things we don't notice, swayed by emotions we don't understand, driven by needs we haven't acknowledged. The seducer doesn't create these vulnerabilities, they simply expose and exploit what already exists. The darkness intensifies when we consider power differentials. Influence is most dangerous when wielded by someone with more power, experience, resources, or psychological sophistication than their target. The older person seducing the younger, the employer seducing the employee, the famous seducing the starstruck. In all these cases, influence shades into exploitation because the power imbalance makes genuine free choice questionable. The target might be technically free to refuse, but the psychological and practical costs of refusal may be so high that freedom becomes theoretical rather than real.
There's also a dark beauty in transformation through influence. The seducer can genuinely help someone become more confident, more interesting, more alive. By believing in someone's potential, by creating situations where they can discover new aspects of themselves, by pushing them beyond their usual boundaries, the seducer can facilitate real growth. But this transformation comes with a price: dependency on the seducer as the catalyst for change, and the question of whether the new self is authentic or merely a performance designed to maintain the seducer's interest. The aesthetic dimension of influence cannot be ignored. A well-executed seduction has the structure and rhythm of art. There's the careful composition of first impressions, the development of themes across multiple encounters, the strategic placement of revelations and withdrawals, the building toward crescendo, the resolution of tension.
The seducer is performing a kind of theater where the other person is simultaneously audience and co-star, usually without realizing they're in a performance at all. But perhaps the darkest beauty of influence lies in how it can make someone complicit in their own seduction. Through skilled influence, the seducer doesn't force anything. Instead, they create conditions where the other person persuades themselves. They plant seeds of ideas and let the other person's mind cultivate them. They suggest possibilities and let the other person's fantasies elaborate them. By the time the person realizes they're deeply involved, they can't point to any moment where they were deceived or coerced. They made every choice themselves, unaware that the menu of choices had been carefully curated. The beauty in influence also emerges from its universality. Every human interaction involves some degree of influence. We present ourselves strategically, manage impressions, try to evoke certain responses in others. The parent influences the child, the friend influences the friend, the lover influences the beloved. To completely eschew influence would be to stop interacting socially at all. So the question becomes not whether to influence, but how and why. What intentions guide our influence attempts? What constraints we accept? What outcomes we seek? Understanding influence also reveals its necessity. In a world of competing perspectives and interests, the ability to influence others toward cooperation, understanding, and shared goals becomes essential. The activist influencing people towards social change, the doctor influencing patients toward healthy behaviors, the counselor influencing clients towards self-awareness. All must master the arts of influence. The alternative is a world where only force and transaction govern relationships, where deeper forms of connection and persuasion are abandoned as inherently manipulative. The dark beauty of influence ultimately reflects the ambiguity of human relationship itself. We are social creatures who exist in webs of mutual influence. We shape and are shaped by each other constantly. The seducer simply makes explicit and intentional what usually remains implicit and unconscious. This clarity can be used for good or ill, but the underlying reality that we are all influencing and being influenced all the time remains regardless of whether we acknowledge it. Seduction as a form of power. Power dynamics infuse every seduction, whether acknowledged or not. At its core, seduction is an attempt to gain power over another person's emotions, attention, and choices. This doesn't necessarily make it wrong, but it does require examining what kind of power is being sought and how it's being exercised. The power in seduction is different from overt coercion. It's not the power of force, but the power of attraction. The seducer seeks to make the other person want what they want them to want: attention, affection, commitment, intimacy. This is a softer power, but in some ways more complete, because the person being seduced often doesn't feel powerless. They feel they're making choices, following desires, acting on attraction. The power is concealed by the appearance of mutual desire. This concealment is what makes seductive power particularly potent. Traditional power is visible: the boss over employee, the parent over child, the state over citizen. This visibility creates awareness and often resistance. People know they're being controlled and may comply while seeking ways to escape or subvert that control. But seductive power makes the other person want what you want them to want. There's no awareness of control because it feels like authentic desire, no resistance because it seems like their own choice. The seducer accumulates several types of power simultaneously. There's the power of being desired, which creates leverage. The other person will make concessions, tolerate behaviors, compromise boundaries to maintain access to the seducer. There's the power of knowledge. The seducer typically knows much more about what's happening than the other person, creating information asymmetry that can be exploited. There's the power of emotional control, the ability to make someone happy or anxious, confident or insecure through the manipulation of attention and approval. Social power amplifies seductive power. The person with status, resources, fame, or beauty begins with advantages that make seduction easier. They can be more selective, can fail more often without consequence, can take greater risks. Their seductions happen in a context where social power has already done much of the work. The target is predisposed to value their attention because society has signaled that this person's attention is valuable. This intersection of seductive and social power means that those who already have power gain more, while those with less power remain at a disadvantage.
The power dynamic in seduction often involves a reversal. Initially, the pursuer may seem like the less powerful party. They're the one seeking, wanting, trying to win over someone who has what they desire. But successful seduction actually transfers power to the pursuer. Once the other person is invested, emotionally attached, their choices constrained by their feelings, the power balance shifts. The former pursuer becomes the more powerful party, able to withdraw attention, make demands, or take advantage of the other person's emotional investment. This power can be exercised in destructive ways. The seducer might use their power to extract resources, money, labor, social access. They might use it for ego gratification, the pleasure of being desired, the validation of conquering, the entertainment of emotional drama. They might use it to avoid intimacy. Maintaining power prevents vulnerability and keeps them in control. Or they might use it simply from habit. They've learned that seductive power works and brings rewards, so they continue wielding it without particular thought about consequences for others. But power and seduction can also be exercised constructively. The person with seductive power can use it to help others grow, to create beauty and joy, to forge genuine connections. They can wield their influence responsibly, aware of the potential for harm, and actively choosing to minimize it. They can seek balanced relationships where power is mutual rather than unilateral, where both parties influence each other rather than one dominating. The question of consent becomes complex in the context of seductive power. Legal consent may be present, both parties are adults, no force is used, all choices appear free. But meaningful consent requires awareness of what's happening and genuine freedom to refuse. When someone has been psychologically manipulated, when their emotions have been strategically engineered, when they're operating under illusions the seducer has cultivated, is their consent truly meaningful? The seducer has shaped the very desires and perceptions through which the other person makes choices. Power in seduction also involves responsibility. With the ability to influence another person's emotions and choices comes an obligation to exercise that ability carefully. This doesn't mean never using seductive power. That would be both impossible and perhaps even undesirable. But it means being aware of what you're doing, honest about your intentions, and considerate of the other person's well-being. It means recognizing that causing emotional harm through seductive manipulation is still causing harm, even if no laws are broken. The most dangerous aspect of seductive power is its potential for abuse in intimate relationships. Once seduction has led to commitment, cohabitation, marriage, children, the power accumulated through seduction can be used to maintain control even as the relationship becomes unhealthy. The person is now invested beyond the emotional, with practical and social barriers to leaving. The seducer can exploit this position, using the same techniques that won the person initially to keep them bound, even as the relationship serves only the seducer's interests. Understanding seduction as power also means recognizing our own capacity for misusing it. Most people have some seductive power, some ability to influence others emotionally and psychologically. The question is not whether we have this power, but what we do with it. Do we use it to take without giving? To create false intimacy that serves our needs while ignoring the other person's? To avoid genuine vulnerability by staying in control? Or do we use it to create real connection, to help others flourish, to build relationships that enrich both parties? The ethics of seductive power ultimately come down to respect for autonomy. Even while recognizing that pure autonomy is impossible, we're all influenced by each other. There's a difference between influence that respects someone's agency and manipulation that subverts it. The ethical seducer may still influence, may still guide emotions and choices, but does so while being fundamentally honest about their intentions and maintaining respect for the other person as an equal, autonomous agent, rather than an object to be won or a tool to be used. The thin line between attraction and manipulation. The line between ethical attraction and unethical manipulation is real, but surprisingly thin, often more a matter of intention and awareness than technique. Many of the same behaviors can constitute either legitimate courtship or psychological manipulation, depending on the spirit in which they're performed and the consequences they produce. Consider attention. Giving someone focused, genuine attention is a fundamental part of building any relationship, but strategically withholding and providing attention to create dependency crosses into manipulation. The difference lies not in the behavior itself, but whether the pattern is a natural reflection of a busy life or a calculated strategy to create emotional instability. The problem is that even the person doing it may not fully know their own intentions. We're all capable of self-deception about our motivations. The same ambiguity surrounds mystery. Maintaining some privacy and not immediately revealing everything about yourself is healthy and normal, but deliberately cultivating an aura of mystery specifically to keep someone hooked while presenting a false front to seem more appealing than you are constitutes manipulation. Where's the line? It's somewhere between legitimate privacy and strategic deception, but that exact boundary remains fuzzy in practice. Intent matters enormously in distinguishing attraction from manipulation. Are you trying to create genuine connection where both parties benefit and grow? Or are you trying to extract something from the other person? Validation, sex, resources, entertainment, while giving as little as possible in return. The person seeking mutual flourishing may use many of the same techniques as the manipulator, but they're guided by different values and seeking different outcomes. However, focusing solely on intent has limitations. People can have good intentions while still behaving manipulatively. Someone might genuinely believe they're helping their partner by undermining their confidence to keep them from leaving. They might think they're protecting the relationship by creating dependency. Good intentions don't automatically make behavior ethical when it harms or disrespects the other person's autonomy. The impact on the other person provides another way to distinguish attraction from manipulation. Does the interaction leave them feeling better or worse about themselves, more capable or more dependent, more free or more constrained? Genuine attraction typically elevates both parties. Both feel more alive, more themselves, more capable. Manipulation often diminishes the manipulated person while aggrandizing the manipulator. They feel confused, anxious, dependent, unsure of their own perceptions and worth. Honesty represents another crucial distinction. The ethical person may present their best self and strategically time revelations, but they're fundamentally honest about who they are and what they want. The manipulator presents a false self, lies about intentions, conceals character flaws that would affect the other person's choices. This doesn't mean brutal honesty about every thought and feeling. Some discretion is appropriate and kind, but it does mean not systematically deceiving someone about important realities.
Power dynamics complicate the distinction. When there is significant power difference,
age, status, experience, resources, behaviors that might be acceptable between equals become manipulative. The 50-year-old using sophisticated psychological techniques on the 20-year-old is manipulating even if those same techniques would be fair game between two 50-year-olds. The power differential makes true consent questionable and creates an ethical responsibility to be more, not less, careful about psychological influence. The presence of exploitation marks a clear boundary. If you're getting your needs met while deliberately leaving theirs unmet, if you're taking from them while giving nothing of real value in return, if you're using them as a means to your ends without regard for their well-being, that's manipulation. Genuine attraction involves reciprocity, care for the other person's interests alongside your own, a willingness to give as well as receive. Self-awareness also distinguishes the ethical from the manipulative. The manipulator often refuses to acknowledge what they're doing, even to themselves. They maintain willful ignorance about their impact on others, avoid examining their own motivations, and deflect responsibility when confronted. The ethical person engages in ongoing self-examination, considers how their behavior affects others, and takes responsibility when they cause harm, even unintentionally. The difficulty is that these distinctions, while real, are not always clear in the moment. We're often unsure of our own intentions, which can be mixed and partially unconscious. We may rationalize manipulation as authentic attraction. We may be genuinely attracted while also being manipulative. The human psyche is complex enough that multiple contradictory things can be true simultaneously. Context matters in drawing the line. Some degree of strategic self-presentation is expected and accepted in courtship across cultures. Everyone is trying to make a good impression, showing their better qualities more than their worse ones, timing revelations strategically. This is considered normal and ethical. But there are gradations between normal self-presentation and systematic deception, and different communities and individuals draw those lines differently. The line also shifts over time in a relationship. Behaviors appropriate during initial courtship, maintaining some mystery, not being too available, showing your best self, become inappropriate in an established, committed relationship where deeper honesty and availability are expected. What counts as normal attraction early on can become manipulative later when different standards apply. Cultural factors influence where the line falls. Some cultures accept more indirect communication and strategic behavior in courtship. Others value more direct honesty. What seems like normal romantic strategy in one context might read as manipulation in another. This doesn't mean anything goes. There are human universals in what constitutes respect and care, but it does mean the specific behaviors that embody respect or manipulation vary across contexts. Personal history affects how people experience the line. Someone with trauma around manipulation may experience normal courtship behaviors as threatening and manipulative. Someone raised in a manipulative environment might not recognize manipulation as unusual. This means that behaviors need to be calibrated not just to general standards, but to the specific person and their sensitivities, which requires attention and empathy. Perhaps the most important principle is this: if you're deliberately doing things that would stop working if the other person understood what you were doing, you've crossed the line into manipulation. Ethical attraction strategies generally survive transparency. If you're being genuine, paying attention to someone because you're genuinely interested, maintaining mystery because you genuinely have a rich inner life rather than as a tactic, these things remain attractive even if understood. But if your techniques only work because the other person doesn't realize their techniques, that's manipulation. The thin line between attraction and manipulation ultimately requires constant navigation rather than a single definitive answer. It requires ongoing attention to intentions, impact, honesty, power dynamics, reciprocity, and consent. It requires humility about our own capacity for self-deception and harm, and it requires a commitment to treating other people as ends in themselves rather than means to our ends, even while acknowledging that all relationships involve some degree of mutual influence and strategic behavior. The why we desire what we cannot have. The human psyche harbors a fundamental paradox. We are most drawn to what remains just beyond our grasp. This phenomenon extends far beyond romantic attraction, permeating every aspect of our lives, from career ambitions to material possessions. Understanding this psychological mechanism reveals profound truths about human nature and the architecture of desire itself. At the heart of this phenomenon lies a basic principle of human psychology: scarcity creates value. When something appears limited, difficult to obtain, or potentially unattainable, our minds automatically assign it greater worth. This isn't mere irrationality, it's an evolutionary adaptation that once helped our ancestors prioritize rare resources essential for survival. In the modern context, however, this same mechanism activates in our emotional and social lives with remarkable intensity. The forbidden fruit principle demonstrates how prohibition amplifies attraction. When we're told something is off limits, whether a relationship, an experience, or an idea, our curiosity intensifies. Psychological reactance theory explains this. When we perceive our freedom to choose being restricted, we experience a motivational state aimed at restoring that freedom. The very act of being told no makes us want to say yes even more fervently. Consider how uncertainty creates emotional investment. When outcomes remain ambiguous, our minds engage in what psychologists call cognitive closure-seeking behavior. We ruminate, fantasize, and project endless possibilities onto the uncertain situation. This mental activity itself deepens our emotional connection. A person who responds inconsistently to our advances occupies more mental space than one who is consistently available. The brain treats uncertainty as a puzzle to be solved, dedicating substantial cognitive resources to the mystery. Distance, whether physical, emotional, or social, functions as a powerful amplifier of desire. The person who travels frequently, who maintains mysterious aspects of their life, or who belongs to a different social sphere becomes more intriguing than someone completely accessible. This distance creates imaginative space where we project our ideals, constructing a fantasy that may exceed reality. The gaps in our knowledge become filled with our hopes and dreams. The psychology of the chase reveals why pursuit itself can be more thrilling than capture. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation and reward seeking, surges during anticipation rather than achievement. The hunt activates our reward circuitry more powerfully than the actual attainment of our goal. This explains why some individuals lose interest once their target becomes fully available. The neurochemical excitement was tied to the pursuit, not the prize. Inaccessibility also triggers our competitive instincts. When others desire what we want, or when someone is surrounded by admirers, our desire intensifies. Social proof, the tendency to view something as more valuable when others value it, combines with competitive drive to create powerful attraction. We want to be the one who succeeds where others might fail, to prove ourselves worthy of what seems difficult to obtain. The idealization that distance permits is psychologically significant. Without complete access to someone, we cannot see their flaws, limitations, and mundane realities. The imagination fills gaps with perfection, creating an idealized image that no real person could match. This is why long-distance relationships often feel more intense during separation than when partners are together. Absence prevents reality from contradicting fantasy. Self-esteem dynamics also play a crucial role. When someone seems difficult to attain, successfully winning them feels like validation of our worth. We internalize the message that we must be special, exceptional, or valuable enough to overcome the barriers. This perceived validation becomes intoxicating, making the pursuit feel deeply meaningful beyond the actual relationship. The role of challenge in human motivation cannot be overstated. We are wired to find meaning in difficulty and to value what requires effort. Easy victories feel hollow, challenging ones feel earned and significant. Someone who presents obstacles, intentionally or otherwise, engages our problem-solving nature and makes ultimate success feel more rewarding. This is why people often describe their most difficult relationships as their most passionate. Understanding these mechanisms offers both power and responsibility. Those who wish to be more attractive can strategically create appropriate distance and uncertainty. However, ethical application requires genuineness. Manufactured scarcity that conceals manipulation ultimately damages trust. The goal should be maintaining healthy boundaries and authentic mystique, rather than playing calculated games. The antidote to unhealthy patterns lies in self-awareness. Recognizing when we're attracted primarily to unavailability rather than genuine compatibility allows us to make better choices. We can learn to value consistent presence, authentic vulnerability, and mutual availability, rather than chasing the neurochemical high of uncertain pursuit. Emotional weaknesses the heart tries to hide. Beneath the surface of our confident exteriors lie vulnerabilities we desperately attempt to conceal, even from ourselves. These hidden emotional weaknesses shape our relationships, influence our decisions, and create openings through which others, whether benevolent or manipulative, can reach us. Understanding these concealed needs illuminates much about human behavior and interpersonal dynamics. The need for validation represents perhaps the most universal hidden weakness. Despite outward confidence, most people harbor deep-seated doubts about their worth, attractiveness, intelligence, or lovability. We construct elaborate defenses against these insecurities, but they remain active beneath the surface, influencing our reactions to others. Someone who genuinely sees our value and reflects it back to us touches this raw nerve, creating powerful attachment. Fear of abandonment operates silently in many hearts, often stemming from early attachment experiences. Even people who appear independent and self-sufficient may secretly fear being left alone, unwanted, or replaced. This fear drives behaviors that seem irrational from the outside, clinging to unsuitable relationships, testing partners' loyalty, or preemptively distancing to avoid the pain of eventual rejection. Those who recognize this fear can either exploit it or help it heal, depending on their intentions. The longing to be truly understood stands as one of humanity's deepest yearnings. We move through life feeling partially invisible, as though others see only our surface while missing our true essence. When someone demonstrates genuine understanding, grasping not just our words but our underlying emotions, motivations, and experiences, they pierce through our isolation. This creates profound connection and makes us feel less alone in our inner world. Unmet childhood needs continue influencing adult relationships in powerful ways. Someone who lacked nurturing may unconsciously seek partners who provide maternal care. Another who never felt protected might be drawn to strong, decisive individuals. These patterns operate largely outside conscious awareness, yet they shape attraction and relationship dynamics powerfully. They represent emotional vulnerabilities we rarely acknowledge but consistently act upon.
The desire to feel special battles constantly with fears of ordinariness. Most people worry secretly that they're unremarkable, that their life lacks significance, or that they'll be forgotten. When someone treats us as unique, sees qualities in us that others miss, or suggests we possess rare value, they address this hidden anxiety.
The relief and pleasure this brings can create strong emotional bonds. Loneliness, even when surrounded by others, afflicts more people than openly admit it. Modern life creates social connections that often lack depth, leaving people feeling fundamentally alone despite numerous acquaintances. Someone who offers genuine companionship, who makes us feel truly seen and accompanied in life, addresses a hunger we may not have fully acknowledged. This is why authentic presence can be more seductive than physical beauty or material wealth. The fear of missing out on life's experiences drives behavior more than we recognize. Many people harbor anxiety that life is passing them by, that others are having richer experiences, or that they're not living fully. Someone who promises adventure, new experiences, or a more vivid existence taps into this worry, offering themselves as a gateway to the life we fear we're missing. Shame about aspects of ourselves we consider unacceptable creates vulnerability. Everyone carries elements of their personality, past, or desires they judge harshly and try to hide. When someone responds to these revealed parts with acceptance rather than judgment, the relief can be overwhelming. This is why confessional intimacy, sharing our perceived worst selves and being accepted, creates such powerful bonds. The need to escape mundane reality motivates more behavior than we consciously recognize. Daily life's repetitive nature can feel suffocating, and many people secretly yearn for something more exciting, romantic, or meaningful. Someone who represents an escape from ordinary existence, who seems to promise transformation or transcendence, addresses this hidden discontent with current circumstances. Control needs often masquerade as other desires. Some people fear the chaos of their emotional lives and desperately seek control, though they'd never articulate it this way. They might describe wanting a reliable partner, but underneath lies anxiety about unpredictability. Others have the opposite pattern. They're so controlled in daily life that they secretly crave surrender, someone who will make decisions and remove the burden of constant self-management. The longing for redemption or second chances influences those who feel they've made mistakes or taken wrong paths in life. Someone who offers hope that it's not too late, that past failures don't define us, or that we can still become who we hoped to be, addresses a deep wound. This is particularly powerful for people in midlife or those who feel stuck in unsatisfying circumstances. These vulnerabilities become dangerous when others exploit them through manipulation. However, they also represent opportunities for genuine healing and connection when approached with empathy and authenticity. The ethical path involves recognizing these needs in ourselves and others while choosing to respond with integrity rather than exploitation. Self-awareness remains the primary defense against manipulation of our hidden weaknesses. By acknowledging our vulnerabilities, we can assess whether someone is genuinely meeting needs in healthy ways or strategically exploiting insecurities for their own purposes. This requires honest self-examination and willingness to see our needs clearly rather than maintaining comfortable illusions.
The art of making someone feel chosen. Among the most powerful psychological experiences is feeling uniquely selected, as though one has been recognized and chosen from among many possibilities. This sensation addresses fundamental human needs for significance, worth, and special recognition. Understanding how this works and how to create this feeling authentically reveals important dimensions of human connection and influence. The psychology of selection taps into deep evolutionary roots. Being chosen by a desirable mate, included in a valuable group, or selected for opportunities meant survival and reproductive success for our ancestors. These ancient mechanisms still activate powerfully in modern contexts, flooding us with positive emotions when we feel chosen and creating anxiety when we fear rejection or exclusion. Exclusive attention creates the sensation of being chosen. In our fragmented, distracted world, genuine presence has become rare. When someone gives us their complete attention, putting away devices, maintaining eye contact, listening deeply without interrupting, they communicate that we matter more than the countless other demands on their attention. This focused presence makes us feel valued and selected in a way that divided attention never can. The power of revealed preference demonstrates choice more convincingly than mere words. When someone demonstrates through actions that they've prioritized us, canceling other plans, going out of their way, sacrificing something valued, they prove we've been chosen. These behavioral demonstrations carry more psychological weight than verbal declarations because actions require genuine investment. Creating a sense of fate or destiny amplifies the feeling of being chosen by suggesting the selection wasn't arbitrary but meaningful and inevitable. References to cosmic timing, unlikely coincidences, or remarkable compatibility suggest that forces beyond individual choice brought you together. This narrative makes the connection feel special and significant, as though it was meant to be rather than one option among many. Recognizing someone's uniqueness before they reveal it creates powerful impact. When you notice distinctive qualities, unusual traits, or hidden talents that others overlook, you demonstrate perceptiveness that makes the person feel truly seen. They think, finally, someone who recognizes what makes me different. This perceived understanding creates strong connection because it validates the person's sense of their own specialness. The contrast effect enhances the sensation of being chosen. By subtly indicating that others have pursued you, that you have options, or that you're generally selective, you make your choice of this particular person seem more meaningful. They're not merely one option, but the option you've selected, despite alternatives. This comparative framework increases their sense of being specially chosen. Shared secrets and selective disclosure create bonds of chosen intimacy. When you share information, vulnerabilities, or aspects of yourself with someone while indicating you don't share these broadly, you make them feel admitted to an exclusive inner circle. This selective vulnerability communicates trust and choice. You've decided they're worthy of knowing the real you. The language of exceptionality reinforces the sense of being chosen. Phrases like, "I don't usually do this," "There's something different about you," or "I've never felt this way before," suggest the person represents an exception to your patterns, making your choice of them seem particularly significant. However, this only works when genuine. False claims eventually erode trust. Remembering specific details demonstrates that someone has been paying special attention and that what they shared mattered enough for you to retain it. When you reference small things they mentioned weeks ago, show awareness of their preferences, or remember stories from their past, you prove they've occupied meaningful space in your thoughts. This retained attention makes them feel chosen and valued. Creating traditions and rituals exclusive to the relationship builds a sense of chosen connection. Whether it's a private joke, a special way of greeting each other, or activities you do together regularly, these unique patterns strengthen the sense that this relationship is special and different from all others. Shared rituals create a private world that belongs only to the two of you. The importance of voluntary choice cannot be overstated. The feeling of being chosen only works when the selection appears genuinely voluntary and motivated by the person's qualities rather than convenience, loneliness, or lack of options. If someone suspects they were chosen merely because they were available or easy, the psychological impact reverses, creating feelings of being settled for rather than selected.
Timing influences the perception of being chosen. When someone pursues you during a period when you feel overlooked, undervalued, or invisible, their attention carries extra weight. They're noticing you when you most need to be seen. Similarly, choosing someone during their difficult times, when they're not at their best, demonstrates that you value their essential self rather than superficial qualities. The balance between choosiness and accessibility matters. Being too available or too eager diminishes the sense that one's selection is special. If you choose everyone, your choice means little. However, being impossibly selective or distant prevents anyone from feeling chosen at all. The optimal position involves being generally selective while making your choice of this particular person clear and definite. Affirming someone's agency and worth beyond the relationship reinforces genuine chosenness. When you support their independent goals, celebrate their successes, and encourage their growth, even in directions that don't directly benefit you, you communicate that you've chosen them as a complete person, rather than as someone who merely serves your needs. This creates deeper, more secure connection. The ethical dimension demands emphasis. Making someone feel chosen can be a genuine expression of authentic preference, or it can be a manipulative technique applied identically to multiple targets. The difference lies in truthfulness and intent. Authentic selection respects the other person's autonomous worth, while manipulation treats them as interchangeable means to an end. Ultimately, the most powerful way to make someone feel chosen is to actually choose them, to genuinely prefer them, to authentically appreciate their unique qualities, and to honestly value your connection. No technique can replicate the impact of sincere selection, and attempts to fake it eventually reveal themselves, damaging the very connection they aimed to create. How control wears the mask of love. Among the most insidious relationship dynamics occurs when domination disguises itself as devotion, when possessiveness masquerades as passion, and when manipulation presents as care. Understanding how control operates under the cover of love is essential for both recognizing unhealthy patterns and avoiding inflicting them on others. The fundamental deception involves reframing control as concern. A partner who monitors your whereabouts constantly claims they're worried about your safety. Someone who isolates you from friends insists they just want quality time together. A person who makes all decisions argues they're protecting you from stress. By casting controlling behavior as loving care, the controller makes objection seem ungrateful or suspicious. Jealousy often serves as control's emotional vehicle, presenting possessiveness as proof of caring. The message becomes, "I'm only jealous because I love you so much." This reframes unhealthy obsession as romantic intensity, making the controlled partner feel their freedom is the price of being deeply loved. The partner comes to believe that tolerating control demonstrates their own commitment and love. Gradual escalation characterizes how control establishes itself. Relationships don't typically begin with overt domination. That would trigger immediate resistance. Instead, control creeps in through small, seemingly reasonable requests. "Can I have your social media passwords? It's just because I trust you and want us to be completely open. Can you check in when you arrive? I just worry about you." Each small concession becomes the baseline for the next request, until significant control has been established without any single dramatic seizure of power. Love bombing creates psychological dependency that facilitates later control. The controller initially provides overwhelming attention, affection, and validation, creating an intense emotional high. This establishes a powerful baseline of how good the relationship can feel. Once the partner is emotionally invested, the controller withdraws this attention strategically, creating emotional withdrawal symptoms. The partner then becomes willing to comply with controls in order to restore the initial euphoric state. Guilt and obligation become weapons in the controller's arsenal. They keep score of everything they've done for you, every sacrifice they've made, building up emotional debt. When you resist their control, they present their list of contributions, implying you owe them compliance. Love becomes transactional. They've invested, now you must pay returns in the form of obedience. The confusion of intensity with intimacy allows control to flourish. Controlling relationships often feel more intense than healthy ones. The constant drama, the emotional ups and downs, the feeling that this person is your whole world. This intensity gets mistaken for deep love rather than recognized as the instability it actually represents. Calm, steady relationships feel boring by comparison, though they're actually healthier.
Isolation emerges as a critical control mechanism. By gradually severing your connections to friends, family, and independent activities, the controller becomes your sole source of social and emotional support. This creates dependence. You lose perspective. You have no one to validate your feelings about the relationship, and leaving becomes practically and psychologically more difficult. All while the controller frames this isolation as creating a beautiful world just for the two of you. Financial control often develops in relationships where one partner manages money. Initially, this might seem practical or even generous. They handle the boring stuff, they have more financial knowledge, or they make more money. But when you need permission for purchases, when you don't have access to accounts, when you must justify your spending while theirs goes unquestioned, practical management has become financial imprisonment, yet it's defended as responsible partnership. Gaslighting undermines your reality testing, making you doubt your own perceptions and judgments. The controller denies things you witnessed, insists conversations happened differently than you remember, or claims your emotional reactions are unreasonable. Over time, you lose confidence in your own mind, becoming dependent on the controller to tell you what's real. They lovingly suggest you're too sensitive, too emotional, or misremembering. They're helping you see clearly. The weapon of intermittent reinforcement keeps victims engaged despite mistreatment. The controller isn't consistently terrible, they alternate between control and affection, between criticism and praise, between coldness and warmth. This creates a powerful psychological trap. Like a slot machine, the unpredictability keeps you playing, always hoping the next interaction will bring the reward of their approval and affection. Threats disguised as worry represent another control tactic. I'm concerned about what could happen if you're out late alone. I worry about those friends' influence on you. Or I'm afraid you'll get hurt if you take that job. These frame restrictions as protection, making you feel cared for rather than controlled. Your growing limitations appear to be your own wise choices based on their helpful concerns. The performance of grand gestures masks ongoing control. Controllers often engage in dramatic, romantic displays, expensive gifts, surprise trips, public declarations of love. These serve multiple purposes. They create debt and obligation, they provide evidence of love that contradicts the control, and they make leaving seem ungrateful. How can you complain about someone who just threw you a surprise party or bought you an extravagant gift? Conditional love maintains control through the implicit threat of withdrawal. You receive affection, approval, and kindness only when you comply with the controller's wishes. When you assert independence or resist their control, love disappears. They become cold, distant, or punishing. You learn that love must be earned through obedience rather than being freely given, as in healthy relationships. The savior complex often underlies controlling behavior. The controller believes they know what's best for you better than you know yourself. They position themselves as rescuing you from your own poor judgment, protecting you from yourself, or elevating you beyond what you could achieve alone.
This narrative casts their control as noble service rather than selfish domination. Breaking free from such dynamics requires recognizing them first. Key warning signs include feeling like you walk on eggshells, needing permission for normal activities, having your reality questioned, losing touch with friends and family, feeling responsible for your partner's emotions, fearing their reactions, and believing you couldn't manage without them. These indicate control, regardless of loving language surrounding them. Recovery involves rebuilding self-trust, reconnecting with support of others, establishing boundaries, and potentially leaving the relationship entirely. Professional support often proves essential because controlling relationships create trauma bonds and psychological patterns that are difficult to break without help. Understanding that real love empowers rather than restricts provides the conceptual foundation for healing. The ethical imperative for potential controllers is recognizing early warning signs in your own behavior, feeling entitled to know everything about your partner, experiencing intense jealousy you expect them to manage, wanting to make decisions for them, feeling threatened by their independence, or believing you know what's best for them. Real love celebrates the other's autonomy, encourages their growth, and trusts their judgment, even when it leads them in directions you wouldn't choose.
Seduction in love, war, and power. The principles of seduction extend far beyond romantic relationships, operating powerfully in political realms, military strategy, business negotiations, and any domain where influence matters. Understanding seduction as a broader strategy of attraction, influence, and persuasion reveals its fundamental role in human affairs and offers insight into how power actually operates in society. The essence of strategic seduction involves making others want to follow, join, or surrender rather than forcing compliance. In war, the seduced enemy switches sides, provides intelligence, or simply loses the will to fight. In politics, seduced populations enthusiastically support leaders rather than grudgingly obeying. In business, seduced customers become loyal advocates rather than one-time buyers. This willing participation proves more effective and sustainable than coercion. Seductive leadership creates followers through attraction rather than fear. Such leaders project vision that addresses deep hopes and aspirations, making people feel part of something larger and more meaningful than themselves. They don't simply command, they inspire, making the cause feel like it belongs to everyone involved. This transforms followers from mere subordinates into true believers who will sacrifice willingly. The seduction of ideology demonstrates how ideas themselves can seduce. Powerful ideologies offer simple explanations for complex realities, promise solutions to fundamental problems, provide identity and belonging, and cast adherents as heroes in a meaningful narrative. People don't adopt ideologies primarily through rational analysis, but through emotional and social seduction. The ideology makes them feel understood, empowered, and connected to others. In political seduction, leaders create compelling personas that embody what populations desire. The strong protector addresses fears and security needs. The transformative reformer appeals to those dissatisfied with current conditions. The populist champion positions themselves as the voice of the forgotten. Each persona seduces different constituencies by reflecting their needs and values back to them. The seduction of narratives shapes how people interpret events and history. Those who control the story control perception of reality. Effective narrative seduction creates simple, emotionally compelling accounts that may oversimplify complex situations but feel true and satisfying. The narrative provides heroes and villains, clear causation and moral lessons, all elements that seduce the human mind more effectively than nuanced analysis. Military seduction throughout history has involved making conquests seem like liberation, making occupation seem like protection, and making surrender seem wise rather than shameful. Conquerors who successfully seduced their targets secured their rule more effectively and cheaply than those who relied purely on force. The seduced population polices itself, saving the conqueror's resources. Corporate seduction creates brands that people love rather than simply products they buy. These brands associate themselves with lifestyles, values, and identities that consumers aspire to. Buying becomes not merely a transaction, but an expression of self and an entry into a desirable group. The company seduces customers into seeing the brand as part of their identity. The seduction of expertise and authority influences behavior across domains. People want to trust experts, to believe authorities have special knowledge that can guide them. This desire creates vulnerability to seductive claims of expertise, whether from legitimate sources or charlatans. The seductive expert projects confidence, uses impressive credentials and specialized language, and promises clarity in confusion. Social seduction involves creating desirability through perceived popularity and status. Groups, movements, and causes become seductive when they're associated with attractive, successful, or admired individuals. People want to join what seems exclusive, elite, or aligned with high-status others. This is why celebrity endorsements, elite institutional affiliations, and displays of success all enhance seductive power. The seduction of the alternative attracts those dissatisfied with mainstream options. The alternative position, whether in politics, lifestyle, or ideology, seduces by promising authenticity, truth, or solutions that the establishment supposedly suppresses. It offers the satisfaction of seeing through illusions and joining a select group of the awakened or enlightened. In political seduction, leaders create compelling personas that embody what populations desire. The strong protector addresses fears and security needs. The transformative reformer appeals to those dissatisfied with current conditions. The populist champion positions themselves as the voice of the forgotten. Each persona seduces different constituencies by reflecting their needs and values back to them. In negotiation and diplomacy, seduction involves making opponents feel understood, respected, and heard, while gradually guiding them toward your preferred outcome. Rather than aggressive demands, seductive negotiators create rapport, find points of agreement, and frame proposals as serving mutual interests. The other party feels they're choosing freely rather than being forced, making agreements more stable. The seduction of moral certainty provides psychological comfort in a complex world. Whether religious, political, or philosophical, systems that promise moral clarity seduce those overwhelmed by ethical ambiguity. They offer clear rules, obvious distinctions between right and wrong, and the satisfaction of knowing you're on the right side. This certainty itself becomes addictive. Power's seduction corrupts not primarily through material benefits, but through psychological gratifications. Power seduces by making people feel important, by surrounding them with deference, by giving them control over others' fates, and by placing them at the center of attention. Once seduced by these psychological rewards, individuals become willing to maintain their position through increasingly questionable means.
The seduction of revolution appeals to the desire for dramatic change and the fantasy of starting fresh. Revolutionary movements seduce by promising to sweep away corrupt old systems and create something pure and new. The romance of revolution, its drama, righteousness, and promise of transformation, seduces more powerfully than careful reform, even when revolution brings tremendous suffering. Resisting seduction in these broader contexts requires recognizing when emotional appeals, social pressures, or promised rewards are clouding judgment.
Critical thinking, diverse information sources, and awareness of one's own psychological needs provide some protection. However, complete immunity is impossible. We remain susceptible to effective seduction because its mechanisms operate at deep psychological levels. The ethical dimension becomes complex when considering seduction in these broader contexts. Is seductive leadership legitimate if it inspires people toward genuinely good ends? Is marketing seduction acceptable if products deliver value? Is political seduction justified if it serves democracy? These questions lack simple answers, but the inquiry itself matters. Becoming conscious of seduction's mechanisms allows more intentional choices about when and how to employ them. Why people fall for the wrong ones. The pattern of romantic attraction to unsuitable partners represents one of humanity's most common and painful experiences. Understanding why intelligent, capable people repeatedly choose partners who cause harm, fail to meet their needs, or recreate painful patterns illuminates deep truths about psychology, attachment, and the often irrational nature of desire. Unconscious repetition compulsion drives much of this pattern. We unconsciously recreate familiar dynamics from our past, particularly from early attachment relationships, in an attempt to master them. If you grew up with an emotionally distant parent, you might find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. The unconscious mind reasons that if you can finally win the love of someone similar to that parent, you'll heal the original wound. This rarely works, but the compulsion persists. The fantasy of transformation seduces people into unsuitable relationships. We see potential rather than reality, believing our love can change the person into who they could become. This fantasy is particularly seductive because it casts us as heroic, special, and powerful, the one who could finally reach them, understand them, or heal them. We become invested in this narrative, making it difficult to see when transformation isn't occurring. Intensity gets confused with compatibility or love. Unsuitable partners often create dramatic, emotionally intense experiences. Conflicts, makeups, jealousy, passion. This intensity activates our nervous system powerfully, creating feelings we interpret as deep connection or great love. In reality, intensity often reflects instability, but the neurochemical arousal feels more exciting than the calm steadiness of healthier relationships. Low self-worth makes healthy love feel suspicious or undeserved. When someone carries deep beliefs about being unworthy, unlovable, or damaged, healthy partners who offer steady love trigger cognitive dissonance. This feels wrong, unearned, or fake. Meanwhile, partners who treat them poorly confirm their negative self-beliefs, feeling paradoxically more authentic. They choose the familiar pain over the unfamiliar goodness. The bad boy or bad girl archetype attracts through rebellion against social expectations and parental values. Choosing the wrong partner serves as a declaration of independence, a rejection of others' plans for your life. This rebellion can feel like authenticity, finally choosing for yourself rather than pleasing others. However, rebelling against others' expectations is still allowing those expectations to determine your choices, just in opposition rather than compliance. Rescue fantasies motivate attraction to troubled partners. Some people feel most valued, needed, and purposeful when caring for someone struggling. A partner who has their life together doesn't need rescuing, which can leave the helper feeling unnecessary. This dynamic often stems from early roles in dysfunctional families, where the person learned to derive worth from being needed by troubled family members. The allure of the challenge operates powerfully. Some people lose interest once a partner becomes fully available and committed, finding the secure relationship boring compared to the excitement of pursuit. They're attracted to emotional unavailability, mixed signals, and uncertainty because these create the chase that activate their reward systems. Winning the unwinnable feels like an achievement. Maintaining the already won feels mundane. Attachment wounds from childhood create specific vulnerabilities. Anxious attachment styles, developed from inconsistent early caregiving, often lead to attraction to avoidant partners who recreate the experience of unpredictable love. The anxious person pursues, the avoidant withdraws, and both confirm their deepest beliefs, that love is unstable, that they must work for approval, that they'll be abandoned or smothered. The seduction of mystery and aloofness makes emotionally unavailable partners seem more interesting than open ones. We project our fantasies onto their ambiguity, creating an idealized image that may bear little relation to reality. An open, communicative partner shows us who they really are, preventing fantasy, while the mysterious partner remains a blank screen for our projections. Chemistry and compatibility get confused, though they're distinct. Chemistry reflects physical attraction and neurochemical responses, often intensified by novelty, uncertainty, and even anxiety. Compatibility involves shared values, compatible life goals, similar emotional needs, and practical lifestyle fit. Great chemistry with poor compatibility creates passionate but dysfunctional relationships, while compatibility without chemistry creates friendship rather than romance. The appeal of the unpredictable relates to dopamine and novelty seeking. Unpredictable partners create intermittent reinforcement, sometimes giving love and attention, sometimes withdrawing. This unpredictability triggers dopamine release more powerfully than consistent behavior, creating a kind of addiction. The brain keeps hoping for the next reward, much like a gambler at a slot machine. Fear of engulfment drives some toward unsuitable partners who won't demand too much closeness. People terrified of losing themselves in a relationship might choose partners who are emotionally distant, commitment-phobic, or otherwise unlikely to create deep intimacy. This allows them to have a relationship while maintaining the distance their fears require. Past trauma creates attractions based on unhealed wounds rather than genuine compatibility. Trauma survivors might be drawn to partners who activate trauma responses, mistaking that familiarity for connection. Or they might choose partners who seem safe but trigger different problems, perhaps someone passive who seems non-threatening but ultimately frustrates needs for partnership and mutual support. Social and family pressure to partner sometimes drives choices of unsuitable people rather than facing being alone or disappointing others. The wrong relationship feels preferable to facing judgment about being single, dealing with pressure about age and childbearing, or contradicting family expectations. The choice reflects fear and external pressure rather than genuine desire. The timing of entry into someone's life influences whether they seem suitable. Someone might pursue a relationship during a time when they're lonely, in crisis, or feeling vulnerable, times when judgment is impaired and needs are acute. The person seems to answer an urgent need, but once circumstances stabilize, the actual incompatibility becomes apparent. Breaking these patterns requires several difficult steps. First, honest self-examination about what you're truly attracted to versus what would actually make you happy. Second, exploration of underlying psychological issues, attachment wounds, self-worth problems, unresolved family dynamics, often with professional help. Third, consciously choosing based on compatibility rather than chemistry alone, which requires overriding powerful emotional and physical impulses. Learning to tolerate the discomfort of healthy relationships represents crucial work. Stable, supportive love might initially feel boring, suspicious, or unearned to someone accustomed to drama. Developing capacity to receive good treatment without sabotaging it requires challenging deep beliefs about oneself and love.
The psychology of obsession. Romantic obsession represents an extreme state where thoughts of another person dominate consciousness, rational judgment diminishes, and the obsessed individual's entire emotional world centers on the object of their fixation. Understanding this psychological state reveals important truths about desire, attachment, and the thin line between passionate love and unhealthy fixation. The neurochemistry of obsession closely resembles addiction. Brain scans of people in early romantic love show activation patterns similar to cocaine use, particularly in dopamine-rich reward centers. When obsession develops, these patterns intensify and persist beyond normal durations. The person becomes addicted to thoughts of their beloved, to any contact or communication, and to the emotional states these create. Withdrawal from the person triggers genuine distress. Limerence describes the obsessive component of romantic attraction. Psychologist Dorothy Tenov coined this term to describe the intense, involuntary emotional state characterized by intrusive thinking about the beloved, fear of rejection, and physical symptoms in their presence. Limerence differs from love in its self-focused nature. The limerent person is primarily concerned with whether their feelings are reciprocated, living for signs of return affection and in terror of rejection. Uncertainty and ambiguity intensify obsessive thinking. When outcomes are clear, whether definitively positive or negative, the mind can settle. But ambiguous situations create rumination as the brain attempts to achieve cognitive closure. The person who sends mixed signals, who is sometimes available and sometimes distant, who might reciprocate but might not, creates maximum conditions for obsessive thinking. The mind keeps processing, analyzing, and interpreting in an attempt to resolve the uncertainty. Fantasy plays a central role in obsession. The obsessed person spends enormous time imagining scenarios, conversations that might happen, romantic outcomes, shared futures. These fantasies release dopamine, creating pleasurable experiences that reinforce the obsessive thinking. The fantasy becomes more compelling than reality, and the person may actually prefer it. Real interaction risks shattering the perfect imagined relationship. Projection allows obsession to flourish. The obsessed person knows relatively little about their target's true personality, creating space for extensive projection. They attribute qualities, feelings, and characteristics based more on their hopes than evidence. This created image bears little relation to the actual person, but feels intensely real to the obsessed individual. They've fallen in love with their own creation. The role of barriers and obstacles in sustaining obsession cannot be overstated. External obstacles, the person is in another relationship, lives far away, belongs to a different social class, create the conditions for extended fantasy. Without access, imagination fills the gap. Similarly, internal obstacles, the person is emotionally unavailable, shows limited interest, prevent the definitive rejection that might end the obsession. Romeo and Juliet's families didn't prevent their love, they intensified it into tragedy. Low self-worth often underlies obsessive patterns. The obsessed person may believe they're unworthy of the beloved, making any attention or positive response feel incredibly significant and reinforcing. Each small sign of interest gets magnified into major encouragement, while negative signals get rationalized or minimized. The very unworthiness feelings that drive the obsession also make the person reluctant to directly pursue resolution, preferring obsessive longing to potential rejection. The escape function of obsession offers psychological utility. For someone unhappy with their life circumstances, obsessive focus on another person provides mental escape from present difficulties. Work problems, personal challenges, existential concerns all fade into the background when consciousness is consumed by romantic obsession. This escapist function can make the obsession psychologically necessary, explaining why some people move from one obsession to the next. Anxious attachment styles predispose toward obsessive patterns. People with anxious attachment, developed from inconsistent early caregiving, desperately seek closeness while fearing abandonment. They vigilantly monitor for signs of withdrawal or rejection, becoming hyper-aware of any shift in their partner's behavior. This hyperfocus easily escalates into obsessive preoccupation, particularly when the other person is inconsistently available, recreating early attachment dynamics. Social isolation intensifies obsessive tendencies. When someone lacks diverse social connections and meaningful activities, a single relationship or potential relationship can become disproportionately important. The person literally has nothing else to think about, no other sources of emotional fulfillment or distraction. The beloved fills the entire emotional landscape because that landscape is otherwise empty. Technology and social media have created new dimensions for obsession. The ability to constantly check someone's profiles, to see their activities and social connections, to maintain surveillance from a distance feeds obsessive behavior. Each check provides a small hit of information and possible dopamine, reinforcing the checking behavior. The technology creates an illusion of connection while preventing actual resolution. The transformation from love to obsession involves crossing certain thresholds. Love enhances life, adding joy while allowing continued functioning in other domains. Obsession impairs functioning. Work suffers, other relationships deteriorate, self-care declines. Love brings pleasure and satisfaction. Obsession creates suffering despite intense feelings. Love respects the beloved's autonomy. Obsession demands possession and control.
The dangers of obsession range from personal suffering to harmful behavior. The obsessed person might sacrifice career opportunities, financial stability, or other relationships for someone who doesn't reciprocate their feelings. In extreme cases, obsession motivates stalking, harassment, or violence when the obsessed person cannot tolerate rejection or separation. Even when not violent, obsession creates significant psychological distress and wastes emotional energy on something fundamentally fruitless. Breaking free from obsession requires several interventions. Distance and no contact prove essential. Continued exposure, even through social media, prevents the neurochemical patterns from resetting. Cognitive restructuring challenges the idealized fantasy, helping the person see the actual person rather than their projection. Behavioral activation encourages engagement with other activities and relationships, filling the void that obsession filled. Often, professional help patterns similar to OCD that are difficult to break without intervention. Understanding the difference between passionate love and unhealthy obsession helps prevent the latter. Passionate love adds to your life without dominating it, brings reciprocal joy, respects boundaries, and exists in reality rather than fantasy. It makes you want to be a better person and brings out good qualities. Obsession consumes your life, exists primarily in one person's mind, violates boundaries, and often brings out worse qualities like jealousy, desperation, and irrational behavior. Prevention involves maintaining balanced perspective about new relationships, ensuring diverse sources of fulfillment and meaning, working on underlying self-worth and attachment issues, and recognizing early warning signs of obsessive patterns developing. Self-awareness about one's tendencies toward obsession helps catch these patterns early before they fully develop. 8. Charm, confidence, and psychological pull. The qualities that make certain individuals magnetically attractive often transcend physical beauty, involving instead subtle psychological dynamics that create powerful interpersonal pull. Understanding charm and confidence as specific, learnable skills rather than innate gifts reveals how social power actually operates and offers pathways for developing these qualities authentically. Genuine confidence communicates self-acceptance and groundedness that others find inherently attractive. This differs fundamentally from arrogance or insecurity masked as bravado. True confidence involves comfort with oneself, including limitations and imperfections that allows relaxed presence. This relaxation is contagious. People feel more comfortable around confident individuals because there's no anxious energy to manage or wounded ego to protect. The confident person's lack of need for external validation paradoxically makes others eager to provide it. When someone doesn't desperately seek approval, approval flows more freely. This creates a positive cycle. Their non-neediness attracts positive responses, which further confirms their self-worth, which makes them less needy. Meanwhile, the desperate person seeking approval triggers withdrawal, confirming their fears of rejection, increasing their desperation. Charm involves making others feel good about themselves through genuine attention, appreciation, and warmth. The charming person doesn't make interactions about themselves. They're skilled at drawing others out, listening attentively, finding interesting qualities, and expressing authentic appreciation. People leave interactions with charming individuals feeling better than they did before, more interesting, more attractive, more valued. This feeling becomes associated with the charming person, creating desire for more contact. The power of presence cannot be overstated. In our distracted age, giving someone complete attention represents a rare gift. The magnetically attractive person maintains eye contact, listens without interrupting, asks follow-up questions, and demonstrates that this moment with this person matters more than whatever else might be competing for their attention. This focused presence makes others feel important and seen. Storytelling ability enhances charm significantly. People who can tell engaging stories draw others in, making interactions entertaining and memorable. Good storytelling isn't about dominating conversation, but about knowing when and how to share experiences in ways that illuminate, amuse, or create connection. The story becomes a gift to the audience rather than self-aggrandizement. Social intelligence involves reading others accurately and adjusting behavior appropriately. The socially intelligent person notices discomfort and responds sensitively, recognizes interest and encourages it, picks up on emotional undertones that others miss. This attunement makes interactions flow smoothly and makes others feel understood, creating the sense that this person gets them in a way most people don't.
Playfulness and humor create psychological ease and pleasure. The person who can bring lightness to interactions without diminishing their substance creates enjoyable experiences. Playful teasing, when done skillfully and warmly, creates intimacy and indicates confidence. The ability to laugh at oneself demonstrates secure self-worth that doesn't require constant protection of image. Passion for something beyond oneself generates attractive energy. Whether career, creative pursuits, causes, or interests, people with genuine passions radiate engagement with life that draws others. This passion communicates that life has meaning and possibility, contrasting with cynicism or apathy. Others want to be around this energy, hoping it might enliven their own lives. The element of mystery enhances attraction, while complete transparency diminishes it. People who share everything immediately leave nothing to discover, while those who reveal themselves gradually maintain interest. This doesn't mean dishonesty or game playing, but rather natural reserve. Not every thought and feeling needs immediate expression. The gradual revelation creates deepening interest as layers unfold over time. Confidence in expressing desire and interest, when done respectfully, proves far more attractive than ambiguous signals. The person who can say clearly what they want without desperation or manipulation communicates self-knowledge and directness that many find refreshing. This eliminates the exhausting guessing games that plague many interactions, though it requires risking rejection, which confident people can tolerate. Body language communicates confidence or insecurity more powerfully than words. Open posture, maintained eye contact, relaxed movements, appropriate touch, and claiming space all signal confidence. Meanwhile, crossed arms, averted gaze, fidgeting, and making oneself small broadcast insecurity. Conscious attention to body language can enhance confidence, and genuine inner confidence naturally produces attractive body language. The abundance mentality, believing there are sufficient opportunities, relationships, and successes available, creates attractive energy. People operating from abundance don't cling desperately to any single possibility because they trust more will come. This non-clinging paradoxically makes others more drawn to them. Scarcity thinking creates desperate grasping that repels others. Emotional stability and regulation make someone safe and attractive to be around. People who can handle stress, disappointment, or conflict without becoming dysregulated or punishing others create psychological safety. This stability allows others to relax rather than walking on eggshells or managing volatile emotions. The emotionally stable person becomes a refuge from life's chaos. Vulnerability at appropriate moments creates genuine connection that pure confidence cannot. The person who can admit uncertainty, share struggles, or acknowledge mistakes demonstrates authentic humanity. This selective vulnerability, different from chronic complaining or excessive disclosure, invites others into deeper connection, while the surrounding confidence prevents the vulnerability from seeming like weakness. Generosity of spirit enhances charm immensely. This includes generosity with compliments, with time and attention, with patience for others' differences, and with forgiveness for minor offenses. Generous people make interactions pleasant, while stingy people, with praise, understanding, or goodwill, make them stressful. Generosity suggests abundance, while stinginess broadcasts insecurity. The development of these qualities requires both internal and external work. Internal work involves addressing insecurities, developing genuine self-worth, cultivating interests and passions, and understanding one's own emotions. External work involves practicing social skills, learning from interactions, developing emotional intelligence, and exposing oneself to diverse social situations. Authenticity must underlie all these qualities, or they become manipulative performance. Techniques without genuine substance eventually reveal themselves as hollow. The goal is developing real confidence, actual interest in others, authentic warmth, and genuine charm, not learning to fake these qualities convincingly. People ultimately sense the difference between performance and reality. The human need to be desired. Among our deepest psychological needs, the desire to be desired rivals even more obvious requirements like food and shelter. This need shapes behavior, influences decisions, and motivates countless actions throughout life. Understanding why being desired matters so profoundly reveals important truths about human nature and social existence. Evolutionary roots explain part of this need's intensity. For our ancestors, being desired meant reproductive opportunities, social inclusion, and alliance formation, all critical for survival and genetic transmission. Those who didn't inspire desire in others risked isolation, reproductive failure, and reduced survival chances. Natural selection favored individuals who cared deeply about being desired and worked to maintain desirability. Desire from others confirms our worth and value in ways self-assessment cannot. We can tell ourselves we're attractive, interesting, or valuable, but doubt always remains. Am I deceiving myself? When others desire us, it provides external validation that feels more reliable than internal assessment. Their desire proves we possess qualities that others value, confirming our positive self-view or challenging our negative one. The need to be desired extends beyond sexual attraction to include professional desire, being wanted by employers, social desire, being sought as a friend or group member, and creative desire, having one's work wanted or appreciated. Each domain activates the same core need to be valued, chosen, and wanted by others. Absence of desire across domains creates existential distress and questions of life's meaning.
Being desired makes us feel alive and real. Without desire directed toward us, we can feel invisible, inconsequential, or ghost-like, as though we don't fully exist in others' worlds. The gaze of desire confirms our presence and impact on others. This is why invisibility as we age or lose social status feels psychologically devastating. It's not just vanity, but a fundamental threat to our sense of existing meaningfully. The dynamic nature of desire creates ongoing anxiety. Desire must be continuously earned and maintained. It's never permanently secured. This creates vigilance about our desirability, monitoring our appearance, behavior, achievements, and social standing. This vigilance can become exhausting but feels necessary because losing desirability means losing access to important resources and relationships. Different individuals draw self-worth from different sources of desire. Some prioritize sexual desirability, investing heavily in physical appearance and sexual attractiveness. Others focus on professional desirability, deriving worth from career success and being wanted by employers or clients. Still others emphasize social desirability, investing in friendships and social standing. Most people balance multiple domains but weight them differently based on personality and values. The paradox of neediness undermines its own goal. Those who most desperately need to be desired often engage in behaviors that reduce their desirability. They become clingy, desperate, willing to accept poor treatment, or transparent in their need. This neediness itself becomes unattractive, creating a vicious cycle. Meanwhile, those who are secure in being desired become less desperate, which enhances their attractiveness further. Comparison and social hierarchy intensify the need to be desired. We don't just want to be desired in absolute terms. We want to be desired more than others, to rank highly in desirability hierarchies. Social media amplifies this dynamic, creating constant comparison opportunities and metrics for measuring desirability through likes, follows, and other quantifiable signals of others' attention and approval. The desire to be desired can drive self-improvement or self-destruction. Positively channeled, it motivates developing genuine skills, improving health, cultivating interesting qualities, and contributing value to others. Destructively channeled, it drives unhealthy behaviors, eating disorders, excessive cosmetic procedures, compromising values to gain approval, or staying in harmful relationships rather than facing being unwanted. Age and changing desirability create psychological challenges. Youth naturally confers certain forms of desirability without effort. As we age, maintaining desirability requires more work, and certain forms, particularly physical attractiveness, inevitably decline. This creates grief and requires shifting self-worth to forms of desirability less dependent on youth, wisdom, expertise, resources, emotional maturity. Cultural and individual variation exists in what makes someone desirable. Different cultures value different qualities, and individuals within cultures have diverse preferences. This means there's no universal formula for desirability. What makes one person desired by a particular audience might not work elsewhere. Understanding your audience and aligning with their values increases desirability within that context, though authenticity matters too. The paradox of authenticity versus performance creates tension. Should you modify yourself to become more desirable, or does authentic self-expression matter more? This dilemma lacks a simple answer. Strategic self-presentation to emphasize attractive qualities seems reasonable, but fundamental self-betrayal for desirability creates inner conflict and attracts wrong-fit relationships and opportunities. Rejection and failure to inspire desire creates significant psychological pain. Being unwanted triggers deep fears and negative self-beliefs. Repeated rejection can create lasting wounds that affect self-worth and future relationships. However, universal desirability is impossible. Everyone faces rejection from some quarters. Learning to tolerate this without internalizing it as total unworthiness represents important developmental work. Finding balance between meeting this need healthily and becoming enslaved to it is crucial. Some desire from others is normal and healthy. We're social creatures who need connection and validation, but organizing one's entire life around being maximally desired to everyone creates exhausting inauthenticity and inner emptiness. The goal is cultivating genuine qualities that naturally attract appropriate others while maintaining self-worth independent of external desire. Seeing through the illusions of seduction. Developing the capacity to recognize seductive patterns, whether you're the target or the practitioner, represents crucial wisdom for navigating relationships, power dynamics, and social influence with integrity and awareness. This final section examines how to see clearly through seduction's enchantments and make conscious choices about when to engage, when to resist, and how to proceed ethically. The first step in seeing through seduction involves recognizing when strong emotions arise suddenly and intensely. Seduction works by triggering powerful feelings that bypass rational consideration. When you find yourself swept up in intense attraction, desire, or conviction with someone you barely know, this suggests seductive dynamics rather than genuine connection. Genuine intimacy develops gradually through actual knowledge of another person, while seduction creates intensity through strategic triggers. Examining what need is being addressed reveals seduction's mechanism. Is this person making you feel special in ways you've longed for? Are they offering escape from current difficulties? Do they reflect back an idealized image of yourself? Understanding which psychological need or vulnerability is being activated allows you to step back and assess whether this connection genuinely serves your interests or merely triggers compelling emotions. Paying attention to inconsistencies between words and actions exposes manipulative seduction. Seducers often promise much while delivering little, say one thing while doing another, or create ambiguity that keeps you hopeful but never satisfied. Someone genuinely interested in healthy connection demonstrates consistency. Their actions align with their words, and they follow through on commitments. Persistent inconsistency signals seductive manipulation. Noticing isolation and changed behavior patterns indicates concerning dynamics. If you find yourself pulling away from friends and family, if your values seem to be shifting, if activities you once enjoyed no longer matter, these changes suggest someone is seducing you away from yourself. Healthy relationships broaden your world. Seductive manipulation narrows it to center on the seducer.
Asking whether you're choosing or being chosen helps clarify dynamics. Do you feel like an active agent making conscious decisions, Or do you feel swept along by forces you don't quite control? Are you thinking clearly about what you actually want, or are you caught up in what someone else wants from you? Seduction diminishes agency, while healthy influence respects it. Considering what you're being seduced toward or away from reveals underlying dynamics. Are you being drawn towards something genuinely good for you, or away from people and things that support your well-being? Is this moving you toward your genuine goals and values, or in directions that serve someone else's interests? Seduction often involves redirection from your authentic path. Checking your reactions for disproportionality helps identify seductive influence. Are you reacting more strongly than circumstances warrant? Does this person or situation occupy more mental space than makes sense, given your actual relationship or investment? Do you feel addicted to interactions, needing regular hits of contact? These disproportionate reactions suggest seductive hooks have been set. Seeking outside perspective from trusted others provides reality testing. People caught in seductive dynamics often know something feels wrong, but can't see clearly themselves. Trusted friends and family who know you well can offer perspectives unclouded by the seductive influence. Their concerns should be taken seriously, particularly if multiple people express worry. Examining patterns across multiple relationships reveals your vulnerabilities. Do you repeatedly attract or are attracted to similar types? Do relationships follow similar trajectories? These patterns suggest you carry vulnerabilities that get consistently activated. Understanding your patterns helps you recognize them earlier and make different choices. Taking space and time before major decisions prevents seduction-induced mistakes. Seducers often create urgency. This opportunity won't last. You must decide now. Others are waiting. Legitimate opportunities respect your need for considered decision-making. Creating space to think clearly, away from the seducer's influence, allows rational assessment rather than emotion-driven choices. Learning to tolerate discomfort and delayed gratification protects against seduction. Much seductive power derives from promising immediate good feelings, escape from current discomfort, or quick solutions to difficult problems. Developing capacity to sit with discomfort, to work through difficulties, and to delay gratification makes you less vulnerable to these promises. Understanding your own seductive tendencies allows self-regulation. Most people have engaged in seductive behavior at some point, even if unconsciously. Recognizing when you're strategically triggering others' emotions, when you're being less than honest about your intentions, or when you're exploiting vulnerabilities allows you to choose differently. Ethical conduct requires this self-awareness. Distinguishing between ethical influence and manipulative seduction helps navigate gray areas. Not all influence is problematic. Inspiration, motivation, and persuasion can be legitimate. The key questions are you being honest about your intentions? Do you respect the other person's autonomous choice? Would you want this same approach used on someone you care about? These questions help identify when you've crossed from ethical influence into manipulation. Developing genuine confidence and self-worth reduces vulnerability to seduction. When you feel fundamentally okay about yourself, when you trust your judgment, and when you have multiple sources of fulfillment, you're less susceptible to seductive triggers. The person seducing you with promises of making you feel special has less power when you already feel reasonably good about yourself. Accepting reality rather than living in fantasy protects against seduction. Seduction often involves choosing comforting fantasy over difficult reality. Developing capacity to see clearly, including seeing unflattering truths about others and yourself, provides immunity to seductive illusions. Reality, though sometimes disappointing, provides stable ground that fantasy cannot. Practicing assertive communication and boundary setting prevents seductive manipulation. When you can say no clearly, when you can assert your needs and limits, When you can walk away from situations that don't serve you, seduction loses much of its power. Seducers rely on people's difficulty refusing, their desire to please, and their reluctance to disappoint. Strong boundaries block these tactics. Ultimately, seeing through seduction's illusions requires committing to truth over comfortable deception, to genuine connection over strategic manipulation, and to long-term well-being over short-term intensity. This doesn't mean becoming invulnerable to all influence or to avoid all forms of seduction. Human connection necessarily involves influence, attraction, and elements of seduction. Rather, the goal is moving through these dynamics with awareness, making conscious choices about when to open and when to protect yourself, and engaging with others in ways that honor both their humanity and your own. This consciousness transforms seduction from something that happens to you into something you navigate with wisdom and integrity.
Here are some questions. Number 1. If your best friend was in your exact situation, what advice would you give them that you refuse to take yourself? Why this question matters. This question exposes the gap between what you know intellectually and what you allow emotionally. You already know the truth about your situation, you just don't want to face it. When you imagine someone you love in your circumstances, suddenly the clarity comes. You'd tell them to leave. You'd tell them they deserve better. You'd tell them they're being manipulated, that this isn't love, that they're worth more than this. The brutal truth it reveals. You're not confused. You're not lacking information. You're choosing to ignore what you already know because accepting it would require action, change, and pain. The advice you'd give others is the advice you're desperately avoiding taking yourself. This question removes the excuse of uncertainty. You know exactly what you should do. The question becomes, why aren't you doing it? What to do with this answer? Write down the exact advice you'd give your best friend. Read it as if a trusted person is giving it to you. Then ask yourself, what am I so afraid of that I'm willing to ignore wisdom I trust enough to give to someone I love? The fear you uncover is what's really keeping you stuck. Number 2. Who are you still not over, and what does that say about what you're actually missing in your life right now? Why this question matters. The person you can't stop thinking about isn't special because of who they were. They're haunting you because of what they represented. Maybe they made you feel desired when you felt invisible. Maybe they offered excitement when your life felt mundane. Maybe they saw potential in you that you've stopped seeing in yourself. You're not mourning the person, you're mourning what they gave you that you haven't found elsewhere, including within yourself. The brutal truth it reveals. Your obsession with them is actually about a void in your current life. If you were fulfilled, living authentically and connected to yourself and others in meaningful ways, this person would fade into memory. Their persistent presence in your thoughts is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is whatever emptiness they temporarily filled. What to do with this answer? Identify specifically what that person provided. Was it validation, adventure, permission to be yourself, escape from responsibility? Once you name it, you can pursue it directly rather than through the ghost of someone who's gone. You can validate yourself. You can create your own adventure. You can give yourself permission. You can face what you are escaping. Number 3. When someone shows you healthy, consistent love, why does it feel wrong? What does that discomfort reveal about what you've come to accept as normal? Why this question matters. This question exposes the most dangerous pattern of all, when healthy love feels boring, suspicious, or undeserved, while toxic love feels exciting, real, and familiar.
If stability makes you anxious, if kindness makes you wait for the other shoe to drop, if someone's consistent availability makes you lose interest, your nervous system has been trained to associate love with pain, uncertainty, and chaos.
The brutal truth it reveals. You've normalized dysfunction. Somewhere along the way, maybe in childhood, maybe in past relationships, you learned that love comes with conditions, that you must earn it through suffering, that it disappears without warning, that intensity equals depth. Now, healthy love feels foreign and wrong because it doesn't match your template. You're not attracted to the wrong people, you're repelled by the right ones. What to do with this answer? Recognize that your feelings are lying to you. The discomfort you feel with healthy love isn't a sign it's wrong, it's a sign you need to rewire your nervous system. Stay with the discomfort. Let someone be good to you, even though it feels strange. Understand that boring might actually be safe, that predictable might actually be reliable, and that easy might actually be healthy. Your job is to learn to tolerate goodness. 4. What would you have to admit about yourself if you stopped chasing people who don't choose you back? Why this question matters? The chase itself serves a purpose. It keeps you focused outward rather than inward. As long as you're obsessing over why they don't want you, over what you could do to win them, over analyzing their mixed signals, you don't have to face yourself. The chase is a distraction from harder questions about your own life, choices, and self-worth. The brutal truth it reveals? If you stopped chasing the unavailable, you'd have to face the terrifying possibility that you're available too. Available to be known, to be rejected for who you actually are, to build something real that could actually fail. Chasing the impossible is psychologically safer than risking the possible. You'd also have to admit that you might not believe you deserve someone who actually wants you, that you might be punishing yourself, that you might be repeating a pattern from your past that has nothing to do with the present person. What to do with this answer? Stop running from yourself. Face what you've been avoiding. Maybe you need to work on yourself before you're ready for real relationship. Maybe you need to grieve something from your past. Maybe you need to forgive yourself for something. Maybe you need to build a life that feels meaningful, independent of romantic validation. The person you're chasing is blocking the view of your own reflection. 5. If you died tomorrow, what would you regret not having said, not having done, and not having risked? Why this question matters? This question removes all the noise, the fear, the excuses, the someday, the but what if, and reveals what actually matters to you. Death has a way of clarifying what's real and what's performance. It shows you which relationships you've been taking for granted, which dreams you've been postponing, which versions of yourself you've been hiding, and which risks you've been too afraid to take. The brutal truth it reveals? You already know what you should be doing with your life. You know who you should tell you love them. You know what you should apologize for. You know what dream you gave up too easily. You know what truth you've been too scared to speak. You know what person you've been too afraid to become. The only thing standing between you and these things is fear. And fear is a terrible reason to reach the end of your life with regret. What to do with this answer? Treat your answer as a to-do list, not a fantasy. Whatever you would regret not doing, start doing it now. Not someday, not when circumstances are perfect, not when you're more ready. Now. Call that person, start that project, have that conversation.
Take that risk. Forgive that grudge. The tragedy isn't that life is short, it's that we know it's short and still live as though we have forever. A final challenge. Don't just read these questions. Don't just think about them. Actually answer them. Write their answers down. Say them out loud. Share them with someone you trust. These questions only have power if you let them do what they're designed to do. Make you uncomfortable enough to change.